Fishing Gurus podcast.
Talk to me about the man den in the garden.
The man den. Well, finished it now, haven't I? So, got my little pool table in there.
Nice.
Little bar, all stocked up with my drinks.
What's your choice of drink?
I have Moretti on tap.
On tap?
On tap.
Well,
he's not fucked about there, is he?
It's one of them blade ones where you get 14 pints. You don't have to mess about changing the lines.
What's
and
that
stuff.
like a night's worth for you then?
40, yeah, I do about 2 a night, yeah. No. I don't, I only drink out of it, really. I drink bottles if I'm just going in for 1 or 2.
Right.
But yeah, it's good.
And no fishing tackles in the man den?
No, just pool, sky, and beer.
Was that a something that came out of the first Fish O win?
Yeah. I thought, well, to be honest, I have my back garden done. And I measured it up because I wanted a pool table. And once I started looking at sizes and stuff, I thought, hold on a minute, I could actually put a pool table and a little bar in. So yeah, it's 7 by 5 metres, so it's quite big.
Yeah.
And
You any good at pool?
I'm getting a lot better, yeah.
Mate, he's an expert at pool. He cheekily told me yesterday when I was doing my research.
I'm not an expert, but I am massively improving because I'm practicing a little bit now. Not like intensely, do you know what I mean? But when I play for a team, but you'd have like 2 games a week, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You go to a pub, you might get 2 games in a match, and that'd be it. That's all the pool I'd play.
I've seen you take a bit of money off people at Whiteacres playing pool as well, you crafty devil.
Me and Johnny Jowett beat the Welsh lads, took all their money off them. They was easy. After telling us that, in fact, that Crocker, the lad we played, he was actually junior world champion. So
Get away.
He is quite good. And then Johnny Harvey, he was telling me that he's area. I can't remember what he said. I'm county champion in my and telling us how good he was. And he walked in and he actually he said, "Gives a shot then." So I gave him a cue and he potted all 6 balls. And I looked at Johnny and I was like, oh dear.
This lad's a bit good.
I thought we should have said 50 quid a man instead of 100 quid a man. And then luckily they went, "What are we saying, 50 quid a man?" We was like, yeah. And we ended up beating them. But yeah, they're quite good players. But again, they've not been practicing, so that makes a big difference if you're doing something practicing.
Yeah. Well, you said to me yesterday, you reckon you got 10% better in no time after you got your pool table.
Yeah, definitely. Because, and if I had a coach and I had a lesson off someone, I could probably improve another 10% and then keep practicing what I've been shown. Do you know what I mean? And all of a sudden, same in any sport, do you know what I mean? Like, you just improve so fast.
All of a sudden, Andy Bennett, top angler, turns into Ronnie O'Sullivan Mark II.
Big money pool player.
Well, rather than pool, mate, let's get on to what we're here for. I've been waiting for this time for a while. Welcome to the very first Fishing Gurus podcast.
I know.
Andy Bennett.
It's an honour to be the first guest.
It's an honour to have you on, mate.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Cheers.
We've got a good one, Tove, haven't we?
We have,
First
I've been
one.
looking forward to this as well.
Good. You two have actually met before, haven't you, as well?
We have, yeah. Andy helped me on a previous uni project. Went down to see him. Was it at Whiteacres?
No.
That'd be a long
that would
drive
have been
for you.
Partridge.
That was it. And mate, I remember coming back telling everyone when I got there, and you were dead helpful. But the bit that I tell everyone, I never told you this, is I couldn't believe it when I got there. I felt like I was pestering you with like questions and this and picture here, and you were like sat there talking to me, but you were still casting and like flinging things out and reeling fish in. You weren't looking, mate. And I was kind of like, this man's a fucking machine. Yeah, and you just reeling him in, and you were going, yeah, I think I'm doing all right. He's doing all right over there, but I'm not quite sure. And I come see you a couple of hours later. I was like, how'd you get on? He's like, one. I was like, But to be fair, I got a decent article out of it because you made my headline.
Perfect.
He was pestering me a little bit, but I never told you.
He said to me yesterday, he said, I had this Toby stood behind me. He says he didn't have a clue about fishing. He says he would just stood up 3 metres behind me like, mate, yeah, so what do you do now then, Andy?
Mate, I didn't have a clue. I got a couple of people had a go at me on my way round to see you as well. Like, what are you doing? I was like, come and see Andy. And they're like, fuck off.
Yeah, it's one of them things like, well, I mean, I weren't bothered. I told you could come, do you know what I mean? But yeah, yeah, people walking about, they're like, get down, mate, what are you doing walking around? Because it's like...
That was exactly it, yeah, and I've realised that.
But you got what you needed, didn't you? So it was a good day.
Well, I got back to my lecturers and they're like, you got a fishing story? What? I was like, yeah, geezer's fishing at the lake, a fishing story. Mate, they made its own tab on our website for it and everything.
I remember you sending me, actually. He sent me something about it. It's good.
Absolutely brilliant. So, Andy, I've known you for quite a long time now, but I can honestly say I don't know the full Andy Bennett story. Even while I've known you, you've won an odd thing, of course, but I don't know the nitty-gritty of exactly where it started for Andy Bennett. What happened?
Well, starting right at the beginning then, if you like, probably, I've always fished.
Yeah.
So we'll start with the fishing side of it. Like, I've always fished, but I never had my own gear or anything like that. So basically, in my family, there's my dad and my two brothers, and they fished all the way through. Do you know what I mean? From me being a kid, our dad's not as... He was good when he was younger, but not as keen as our Lee. Our Lee's 5 years older than me. Our dad's is a year older than me. But I always wanted to be with them on a Sunday sort of thing. So I always jumped in my dad's... I think we had a Vauxhall at the time. Vauxhall Astra Estate. We'd get 3 lots of gear and 4 people in it somehow.
You couldn't do that nowadays.
No.
Not a prayer.
Not a chance. You know, I wonder how we ever did it. Because I remember he used to have an ASI box as well. So it was quite a biggish, bulky box. I don't know how we did it. But yeah, they used to fish all the time. And I never really interested in it. And then I used to go, and I got my first lot of gear when I was 14. And I remember it was like Christmas, whatever year, 21 years ago. And my dad got me gear. We went fishing. He had some bloodworm and joker. Went on the Bridgewater Canal. First day with my new gear, my new pole. I think I had like a Maver strong arm at the time.
Wow, I remember that.
And 12.5 metre pole. And yeah, I was like buzzing for it sort of thing. And after about an hour of fishing, caught a few little fish. And my pole's sort of pulling as I'm thinking, what's going on here? I turn behind and there's like a couple of kids about 12, 13 year old pulling on my pole. So I like shook it out their hand. Took it and I was like, we're sat in the middle of Manchester on the Bridgewater Canal. And I'm thinking, my first day with my new gear, and some kids trying to rob it through the there's like a fence and then a gap in the bushes, and where my dad was, they couldn't really see him. So like I fished for a little bit, and obviously broke down twice now instead of shipping all the way out. Next minute, I'm getting stones through, so I'm thinking, Jesus Christ. So like, I was only like 14. There's probably a year younger than me as some of these kids. So I put my pole down, just like walked up to my dad thinking they'll lose interest. Luckily they did. But yeah, that was my first day with my own proper gear.
Brilliant.
And,
Brilliant.
I'll never forget that. And then that's when I sort of got into it a little bit, do you know what I mean? But I used to play football with my mates. And
what, seriously, or?
No, it wasn't like brilliant, but we was good. We won the league sort of 3 out of 4 years. But in our local league, obviously I used to play with a year above me, so my brother, I used to play with his age group, but it was all the local lads and people you went to school with and best players from the local schools. So we had a really good team. We won the double, and we're only talking, we're not talking county level, anything like that, but local leagues, we was a good side. Like, we went one season unbeaten, and when you're winning, it's a buzz, and we got promoted and we won that division. And
so it is pretty serious.
Yeah.
And did it stop you going fishing in them early days?
Yeah, because that was my Sundays then. I didn't really fish then. I'd go maybe on a Saturday with my dad and my brothers, but not really have gear or so I did that from about 13 to 16. And then when it changed was when I got to 16, I started playing pub football. So obviously pub football on a Sunday is like, you go, get there, 10:30 kick off, some 30, 40-year-old guys booting your back, your legs while you're waiting for the ball. The ball's not even there, they're just booting you because they want to intimidate you being a young kid. And it works because you think, I'm not going near him. He's like just booting, big bruisers booting you.
Doesn't sound fun to me.
And it's like, what are you doing, mate? Do you know what I mean? He's like, you what? And they're just looking for a fight, basically. Like, that's their Sunday. They're still half drunk from the night before, and it's not as serious then. So I was like, played about 4 to 5 games, and it was basically just the same every week. They want to go to the pub at 2 o'clock when the game's done and dusted, and that was their day. Do you know what I mean? Some people go and watch football, some people go fishing, but for me, I wanted that competitiveness, and you didn't really get it. Like, when I was winning and playing with my mates, it was great. But moving on to like pub football wasn't for me, and then I started going fishing more then. So from 16, started playing fishing more.
Matches or
straight in the deep end. My dad was a club angler, but he'd progressed to opens, and he started going with Ian Martin from Stalybridge Angling, and we used to go up to Fleets Dam up near your way. Fish on a Sunday there, 12 till 7 matches. And then we used to go to Brookside and Cudmore. And obviously in our area we had a massive following in the northwest from the Kamasan, and the Kamasan Matchman of the Year was always won in the northwest area. So you're fishing against all the best anglers at the time, like Mark Lucas, Andy May in his younger days was, when he was on it was fantastic. Kieran Rich moved up northwest area. That was a little bit later on, to be fair, but you're fishing against like the Garbolino lads at the time, Machin, Moores, just all the best anglers in our region all sort of congregated. So I was chucked in the deep end, but there's no better way of learning than starting straight in, because you know what's right and wrong straight away. Whereas you could start on a club match, for example, and someone could be winning, but it's still not the right way to do it, but it's enough to win. Whereas when you're watching these top class anglers, right, that's how he's feeding, that must be the way to do it. And when they're winning consistently, you start picking up tips quickly and learning faster. And then at 17, what really hooked me was I won with my mates again. I think it was me, Craig Ebrell, James Howarth, a lad called Dave Moran who don't fish anymore.
All ridiculously good anglers.
Good anglers who've continued, you know what I mean? James, sponsored by Guru now as well. Craig doesn't fish as much. Dave doesn't fish as much. But up until the last 5 years ago, really good anglers all the way through the 20s. And we had a really good team back then. We won the individual. I won the individual, and the team won. And Craig Ebrell was 3rd overall in the individual.
And that's the junior nationals.
Yeah, we was Fox Match Tameside, I think.
I can remember that team.
And so I won the junior the intermediate national. Sorry, I was 17. It was my last year, I think, fishing it at Moorlands Farm. My dad was sat behind me. In fact, Toby, Wendy was actually one of the coaches at the time.
Oh, really?
With the Warrington junior team, Warrington intermediate team, and she was actually there on the day with the intermediates.
Wow.
She used to coach them.
Oh, I remember that's Wendy Lithgow, obviously.
Wendy
Lithgow,
about,
yeah.
Frank used to obviously have a lot to do with it and things like that.
Yeah. Wow.
I remember seeing her there. She might have even been sat with one of the lads. I don't know if she.
Just helping him out, during match.
And she'd walk around and just see how they're doing. And I remember my dad was sat behind me, and Wendy was on the next peg for quite some time. I think the lad next to me was doing all right as well. But it's mad. I just thought that then, just because Tob's here. But I won that. So that was all of a sudden, I'm intermediate national champion. Do you know what I mean?
You've sort of skipped all the build-up that normal anglers have. The out club fishing, straight into big open matches. So fishing a junior match must have been easy.
I didn't fish any club matches.
No.
I weren't a member of a club. We used to go on a club water called the ICI and another one called Fox in Stalybridge, and we'd fish an odd open type thing there, but we didn't travel away as a club like you do have. They were just matches on a Saturday. So most of the time, we might fish the ICI, which was just a local lake, and we'd fish there on a Saturday, and then we'd go and fish an open on the Sunday. So down to Cudmore, or at the time Border Fisheries, we went to there. But as a kid, we never did any of that. We just fished Coombs, Toddbrook, Rudyard. That's where my dad, because it was more naturals then. But when I sort of moved on to commercials, like fishing at Brookside, for example, I was about 16, 17 when I fished my first open or so there. That was about the first time that F1s got stocked into venues.
Quite a while ago now.
About 21 years ago. No, about 18 years ago. Right. I'm not saying it's the first F1 venue, but that was the first I'd seen them in the Northwest. And yeah, they stocked them into there. And I remember my first ever open win. They weren't stocked in at that time, but I won it with £25, and that just consisted of 3 big carp and a skimmer, I think, and that was it. So like 3 £8 fish and a skimmer. And when you look back, you think, oh, that's terrible, really. You know what I mean? But I had £25, and that I remember the peg 41, and I won that match, and that was my first ever open win. But yeah, like fishing at that level so quick, you learn a lot quickly. Do you know what I mean?
You're quite lucky, I think, mate, listening to that, to be dropped in at the deep end with that level of angler. Probably done you a lot of good. And I know you mentioned your dad quite a lot already. I think you also used to work with your dad, didn't you?
Yeah, me and my dad was like thick as thieves. Do you know what I mean? Worked together, fished together.
Right.
Just spent all this time together, like in my late teens, early 20s.
And what did you used to do with him for a living, Andy?
When I was 16, I left school. I went straight working with my cousin Paul, who had his own glazing company. Did that for 2 years. That was like commercial work, so fitting shop fronts, things like that. Bigger jobs, curtain walling, things like that, for those who know it. And then moved on to working for his other brother, Alan, who also did glazing.
You can tell he's northern, can't you, Toe? Because it's all R. Lee, R. Allen.
I've always wanted to know what that R is.
It's just R. Allen, innit? And R. Lee.
Wendy says it all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I never got it. Why they
Matt.
Yeah, Matt.
Toby.
Yeah. Go on, so you've gone to work for R. Allen.
Went to work for R. Allen. You know R. Allen. He did like domestic work, so council contracts and things like that. Did that for 2 years. But with our part, it was more travelling about. I didn't like being away from home for 3-4 days at a time, and then I wanted to go fishing, do you know what I mean? And wanted to be at home more. Working for our island, it's going to places and just going to rubbish, crappy jobs, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I thought, no, I'm not doing this. So I went working with Dad, which was continental shifts. It was like a ceramics company called Polypipe, and we used to make like bathroom fixings, so bath panels, toilet seats, all that stuff. And it was a continental shift rotation, so it meant that I was work 4 days, 4 days off, 4 days on, 4 days off. So basically you got 25 days holiday, which if you took correctly, you'd only need sort of 8 days to get 2 and a bit weeks off. So you got like 5.5 months of the year off to go fishing, so it was perfect for me. It was decent money. The rotation of the shift sometimes knackered your weekend fishing up, but I did that for probably from say 19, 20 to about 22, and then I sacked that off.
Did you go fishing a lot on the 4 off days that you had?
Every day, yeah.
Every single day?
Every day, yeah.
What, matches, pleasure fishing?
Matches if I could get them, pleasure fishing if I couldn't. Just at that time I was obsessed with fishing for that 5-6 year period. That's all I was just thinking about.
Right.
And it has its things as well, like, because it cost me one relationship. I bought an house at 20, quite young, with my mate to do up, and then we had a recession around 2008 or whatever it was. Market crash, so I had to move into that house then. Thought I was an entrepreneur for about 6 months, but that didn't work out. So I was like, right, I'm going to have to move into this now, because I can't sell it, because it's just dropped in value. So yeah, I was like quite young, but everyone's just like, you'd be alright, just sit on it.
What was it that cost you the relationship? Were it a serious one, a bird that you liked?
Yeah, we got a mortgage together and that, do you know what I mean? But just I was very selfish, because I wanted to fish and I wanted to achieve my goals, and I was just always fishing. And looking back, I was a terrible boyfriend, really, do you know what I mean? But everything happens for a reason, do you know what I mean?
You're still very young then as well, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm still young. And there's a lot to say for that, because like work-life balance, do you know what I mean? What I'm doing fishing-wise, like it is selfish sport. I think any sport, if you want to be good, you've got to put time in, and you've got to be a little bit selfish, and finding the right partner for that. Like I've been with Arbex now for 10 years, and she's sound as a pound, do you know what I mean? She understands it. Like today, up at 7, home at midnight. It's just part and parcel of it, do you know what I mean? So it's a long old day. It's just how it is. But yeah, finding that balance is massive, do you know what I mean? So I moved on from that. So at 22, and then I had my accident. So I got run over on the motorway. Basically what I did, I took redundancy from them continental shifts.
Right.
I wanted to... basically, my mate Wayne, he had a load of work on. He couldn't get through it all.
Wayne,
So,
talking about Wayne Kearney, who's an angler.
He's a
well
fisherman.
known in the northwest,
Yeah,
isn't he?
I've known Wayne for years. And he's like, I've got loads of work on, do you know what I mean? Like, I just need somewhere to, basically, he used to collect pallets. And back then, there was loads of money in it, do you know what I mean? There was pallets for days. Now, you've got, like, a lot of delivery men picking them up and things like that, and you've got to pay for them, and everywhere's a little bit more secure. Like, things change over a 20-year period, do you know what I mean? 10 years or so. And basically I was going to invest into his business and get a pallet yard with him, and he went on holiday, so I went out in his van. Probably only been 2 weeks made redundant.
So you were actually working for Wayne at this point then?
Yeah,
Been
I went out.
Made redundant.
I went out and did. It's basically like a milk ground type thing. You have a set round and you go and pick all your pallets up. It's a lot different now. Do you know what I mean? But at the time, he was like he couldn't pick them up quick enough. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of money to be made, and I basically went and did his round for him while he was away. He actually went to Whiteacres with family, and while I was out, I got a puncture on the tyre, on the back tyre, so I wanted to change the tyre. Got this jack out of the van, couldn't get the jack to go, and all it was a little tiny switch. And when Wayne rang me, about 30-40 minutes later, he was like, oh, it's just a little flick switch. So I was like, oh, right, so flick this switch up, and perfect, it was working fine. I just literally released the jack, the van just hit the floor, and a car's ran into me on the motorway on the hard shoulder.
Wow.
So, that was like knackered me up for a bit, do you know what I mean? That sort of put me back for 2 years.
What can you remember from that, Andy? Because obviously getting it by a car on motorways, not good.
No, but it's weird, like, I could remember the reg plate of the person.
Never.
I memorised it in case he drove off, and the policeman was like, what? You could... Like, you go into shock and your adrenaline kicks in and things like that, but... So, like, I didn't feel any pain because you're in shock and your adrenaline's kicking in, and I went to stand up and just collapsed, basically, because I smashed all my pelvis. And
when you said the car hit you, did it run you over? What actually happened? What?
So basically, I was changing my wheel. So you imagine you knelt down changing a wheel on your car. It was actually a front right tyre, and as she hit me, my knee got stuck in the wheel nut, and it spun me over, and I landed on my back. So as I landed on my back, obviously I fractured me L5, which is your lowest vertebra in your back. So I suffer with back problem. But I smashed my pelvis. She hit me on the left-hand side of my hip, and I smashed all my pelvis and my acetabulum and everything like that, and basically just shattered all my hip. And I have more problem in the right-hand side because the ricochet through caused more damage on the right, even though she hit me on the left. So my right-hand side's more damaged. They had to chop into me to put plates in. So I've got 3 metal plates and 27 pins holding my hips together.
Wow.
And that was 12 years ago, something like that. And I've only now just started getting an odd bit of problems from my hip. So eventually I'll probably need a hip operation. It's more when I sort of walk on it for long periods or struggle to exercise because it just causes my hip to inflame, which then leads to aching, and it's sore. But I never used to have any problems up until like 6 months ago.
And that must have been a ridiculous recovery period, the first bit after that kind of accident.
Yeah, like I was on crutches for 12 months because you've got to let it heal before you can start putting weight through your thing. And obviously the longer you're out, the more you're losing muscle mass and things like that. So when they did my operation, I lost about 15% of my glutes. Like my physio basically said my right hand side glute is like 15% weaker than my left.
Wow. Could
be through having a bit of tissue removed when they did the operation or whatever it may be. But my right leg's a lot weaker than my left leg. So I couldn't put weight through my right hip for ages. I was on crutches for 12 months, and then...
So no fishing in that period?
I actually booked at Whiteacres. I actually went down to Whiteacres while I was doing that, just more for the break. I was booked on the festival, but I couldn't fish, you know what I mean? I could hobble about on my crutches, but I was in agony. So I remember I was on Peg 4 Trelawney Lodge, And I was like, right, I hope I get a good. I said to my missus at the time, I hope I get a good angle first day. And you won't believe who come down. Like, first day, I've got 5 times world champion Alan Scott-Thorne turned up, and I was like, no way. I said, I've got 5 times world champion. So I sat and watched him fish for 5 hours.
How long after the accident with this when you went to Whiteacres?
Probably 8 months. Like,
still a long time to go.
No, tell lie. It was July. No, it wasn't. It would have been July, August, September, October. 4 months. 4 months. It happened in June, July. So yeah, start of October, probably 4 months. Yeah, so still in quite a bit of pain. And Kerry Kirkwood's missus, actually, Kim, she were down there. She was a district nurse, so she come and clean me wounds every day. And I had MRSA in my hip, and I was like, I ain't going back in hospital. I'll just get someone to clean it. Like, there's no way I'm going back in hospital. It's so depressing. I hate hospitals. I was like, if you can manage without, I'll manage without. So basically, like, I caught MRSA when I was in the hospital, and she used to have to come round.
What is MRSA?
It's like a disease that's sort of, I don't know exactly. It's an infection that you can catch, but obviously
as the result of having
when you've got an open wound, I think it's something to do with that. So basically, I had these 2 little holes in my hip, and it created like, sorry, it's a bit squeamish, but it created like this hole and a funnel in me. It's like you imagine like an inch above and an inch, you've got a hole in your hip, and then an inch below it you've got another hole, but inside there's like this tunnel. Ugh. So she'd come round and she'd like put this cotton bud thing in and clean it with this thing.
Oh.
Yeah. I've just googled it. It's something that comes from staph.
Right.
It's methicillin-resistant staphylococcus. It's an infection caused by staph infection. So yeah, it's like a cut off the back of a staph infection.
Yeah, so it's like, and I caught it in hospital. Right. So they wanted to take me back in hospital basically, and I spent 6 weeks in hospital, and I was like, no, it's depressing, it's horrible, there's no way I'm going back in hospital. So she cleaned my wounds for me, so that allowed me to go. Do you know what I mean? So it was just good to get away, mate, after everything that had happened. And yeah,
I can imagine. The
first time was like, first day was like Alan Scott-Thorne. I was like, this is brilliant. Second day, I got Steve Saunders.
Dower Dorking legend.
Yeah. Can't remember who else. Somebody pretty good. I can't even remember.
And you're just sat in your lodge watching them
just
fish
sit
a
on
match.
the balcony in my lodge. Do you know what I mean? Mrs. bringing out, my ex-missus bringing out cups of tea, and I'm just sat there watching Alan Scott-Thorne, Steve Saunders. Wasn't a very good peg, granted, but it was interesting to watch how they fished it and stuff like that. Yeah, and then on the last day, I remember Steve Ringer was up on peg 10 or 12, I think it was. And bearing in mind, the week before he'd won the festival, he'd had 4 match wins and a second. I walked up there, and I thought I'll hobble up there on my crutches and I'll go and watch him for a bit for the last 20 minutes, because obviously I couldn't stay out for long. I walked up last 20 minutes, something like that, and he was here, there and everywhere, but he didn't catch a fish. But he was like 100 mile an hour here, there, trying his hardest. And I'm thinking, he should be settling on a line now, surely. But obviously, at the time, he's like the commercial king, do you know what I mean?
And he'd won the festival the week before.
Yeah, and he weighed in, he had 10 ounce, and I was like,
never.
Couldn't believe it, do you know what I mean? Like, that's why he was skipping about here, there and everywhere trying to find a fish or two. But it just showed me, like, wow, like, last day of the festival or 4th day of the festival or something, he had the best week ever, and then he had a really poor week where he just drew rubbish and the fishing was hard and he couldn't make anything work for him, but he'd never give up. Like 4th day into the festival, and he's I'd have give up 3 hours before
and he's
that.
Still working his nuts off trying to catch a fish. And
I looked and I was like, wow, like, that's why he wins what he wins, do you know what I mean? His intensity is so high. But yeah, I remember that was some years ago.
It's not a bad week's break watching some of the best anglers in the world, is it? After I suppose after what had happened to you, did you at that point, obviously, did you know you were going to recover, or did you have any idea of like long term what might happen to you? Because I can imagine them plates in you and what had just happened. Surely there's some uncertainty at that point.
Yeah, like you don't know how you're going to fully recover. Like, I had a lot of nerve damage down my leg, so I was getting like pins and needles down my leg all the time, which is a good sign because it means your nerves are recovering. If they're doing nothing, then it means they're pretty much dead and nothing's happening. But I still, like, I've got a drop foot now, so I can only lift my foot up so high. I can push it down, but I can only lift it level. I can't lift it higher. And I've lost a lot of mobility in it because obviously once you stop using something, your mobility reduces as well. So that foot is like a little bit dead. And they chopped my that's because they chopped my sciatic nerve as they was operating on me. Which, you know, like your sinus sheet, you can't really finger, but they shouldn't have really chopped it in hospital, but they did do it, and, you know, I'm not blaming or anything, it is what it is. But yeah, I lost a lot of movement in my leg then, so I've got a drop foot still, but I was getting all these I still get them now. They're just like a tingling sensation down your leg. It actually feels quite nice now when you get it, but it's a bit weird.
Same podcast,
Yeah.
like, oh, that one nice.
Yeah, it's like, ooh, little tingle down my leg there. It's like
playing
someone's...
footsie.
I sometimes get a bit of that, but it's it's not from that.
And yeah, so like, but the early doors, like, it's constant because all your nerves are re-healing, and you have like this TENS machine that you basically put a bit of oil, like a gel on your leg, and you rub it down your leg, and it basically, like, because all your nerves are twisted and things like that, so basically it tries to straighten your nerves a bit more. Worked to an extent, got a little bit of movement back, but yeah.
Did you ever think, you know, like when you sat there recovering from this ridiculous accident and you're watching some anglers fish, did you ever think, will it affect my fishing? Will I be able to do this as good as I could before? Or
yeah, because when it's back problems is bad, do you know what I mean? So like, the first 2 or 3 weeks I was like, will I be able to walk again? And he's like, don't know yet until you've had your operation. Like, the operation was about 2 weeks later than my actual accident.
And how did that make you feel when he said that?
Oh, it's terrible. Like, you're crapping yourself, do you know what I mean? Thinking, shit, like, my life is turned upside down here. Which it did a little bit, do you know what I mean? But you got to take the positives out of it as well. So like, at first, yeah, you're panicking like mad. I was very lucky at the time because of when I bought my house as well. I bought it with the intention to sell it, so I only took an interest-only mortgage. And if you have an accident or something like that, they'll pay the interest, but they won't pay your repayments. But because mine was interest-only, they paid everything. So that saved me from losing my house, which would have been through no fault of my own. Do you know what I mean?
That's a stroke of luck and a good bit of karma, actually.
Yeah. So things like that people forget. You know, we could walk out of here tomorrow, get run over, and it's not your fault, but if you've no insurance for it or whatever, do you know what I mean? Little things like that can really ruin someone's life. Like, I was lucky in a lot of senses and unlucky in others, so you've got to, like, just make the best of what you've been dealt, do you know what I mean? But yeah, like, first few months, you're feeling really down. You know, you've gone through trauma of, like, a road traffic accident or whatever it may be. And after about 6-8 months, I went to see a psychologist. I think you should go and see a psychologist, one of them saying. I was like, no, I don't need a psychologist. Like, well, I think it'd be good for you, do you know what I mean? Yeah, I'm all
Who's
right.
this, the doctors giving you this advice?
Yeah, like doctors, and because you have so many people around you. You have people managing your pain, so you go and see like a pain person. At the time, I was having 22 tablets a day.
Wow.
Taking tablets to settle my stomach because I was having so many tablets. And then you've got a pain management team, you've got a physiotherapy team, you've got other people making sure when you go through a lot of trauma like that, you've got people looking after you, making sure that, you know, right, we're going to send you to a psychologist, make sure you're thinking right and things like this, because a lot of people get down from it, do you know what I mean? Like, and I was like, no, I'm fine, honestly, I'm all right. And they put you on a few antidepressants and things like that, and I didn't feel depressed within myself. I'm like, no, I don't need you to tell me I'm depressed, do you know what I mean? And she's like, you're showing mild symptoms of depression, do you know what I mean? I was like, yeah, you know, but you're in denial for things like that. But obviously I was feeling down, low, not like suicidal thoughts or anything, but you're just thinking like, well, how am I going to get out of this mess, do you know what I mean? This is an absolute mess, like, I can't do manual work again. What am I going to do with myself, do you know what I mean? Like, how am I going to sort of, where do I go from here, sort of thing?
How much did you think about your fishing when you were coming through that? period?
Not for the first bit, like, wasn't interested whatsoever, do you know what I mean? I was more thinking financial and what I'm going to do myself next. Because at that time, fishing wasn't my career, do you know what I mean? It was just a hobby. Wasn't really that bothered about fishing. I only went to Whitaker's because I just wanted the break and I'd already booked it. But fishing wasn't my career then. It wasn't, oh no, how's my fishing going to affect? Wasn't really bothered. I was more thinking about my house and my family at the time and thinking, right, how am I going to sort myself out? What am I going to do myself? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm a manual worker. I've worked manual all my life, glazing or whatever. I don't want to be sat in an office doing, I don't know what to do. I don't have any qualifications to accounts or anything, anything like. So that was my first thought, do you know what I mean? But then after a while, like, I started getting out on the bank after about 15 months later, something like that. And when you're out and about, it's a bit like now with this COVID situation. When you're out and about and you're socialising more, is massive benefit to you. When you're just sat in your house, cooked up and doing nothing, and you can't get off the couch for 12 months, it's a bit rubbish. Do you know what I mean?
Did you have much support from your friends and family at that time? And
yeah, like my mum was brilliant. She'd come and see me every day. My girlfriend at the time, to be fair play to her, she'd come and see me every day. And yeah, like, my family was brilliant. Do you know what I mean? My mum would literally never miss a day. Do you know what I mean? And looking back, like, for 6-8 weeks, it's a lot strange, you know what I mean? But every day, finish work, travel to the other side of Manchester, just so I could see her for an hour. Do you know what I mean? Like, and she would, if she didn't come, then my girlfriend at the time come. But yeah, it's like, it's a big strain on your family as well. Like, we've all got busy lives. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, oh, I've got to go here today. I've got to go here. And when you think back, you think, Jesus Christ, I did that every day for like a month and a half. Do you know what I mean? It's a long time. Once a week, twice a week's enough sometimes to fit in, but every single day, Saturday, Sundays included, it's massive. So yeah, and it helps a lot. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, like, that was probably about
2008. You had your accident.
Yeah, so that was like 15 months after, and then what happened then? Started fishing more, and that's when my fishing then started improving because I was going more. I mean, I was winning before it and doing all right, but it's when you do something regular all the time, that's when you start improving.
So when you were recovering from your operation, 15, and your accident, 15 months later, you've started going fishing, straight back match fishing.
Yeah, because I couldn't work. I took redundancy, so I was meant to be going to work. So at the time, obviously I had no job to go back to. I couldn't go back to a job anyway. So I was in rehabilitation as such, and obviously she was liable for running me over, so I had a claim going through at the time, and I had to take interim payments off my claim just to survive, sort of thing. But I was going physio, say, twice a week, and obviously it's 9 to 5, and then I was going to the hospital regular to have checkups, see how my bones are recovering and things like that. There was something always going on, like 2 or 3 of the days every week. So what I try and do is like try and leave Thursday. Oh no, I can't make Thursday. Can you do Friday? And then I could go and fish the match on a Thursday. So like, oh no, I can't do that time. Have you got Monday? So then I could fish on a Tuesday. So that was what I was. So I was getting to go out fishing a little bit as well, and I used to go there, and I was back on my feet then. Do you know what I mean? Like, I could drive again and get about again. Struggle a little bit carrying my stuff, but you lose confidence as well when you broke something like that. You lose confidence that your bones aren't as strong when they probably are, but your muscles are definitely not. Because if you've not done something, you lose your muscle really quick. Do you know what I mean? If you sat down for say 2 weeks and didn't do anything, you would feel a lot weaker just within 2 weeks of doing nothing.
So never mind 15 months of not doing it.
Yeah, so basically I'm nowhere near as strong as I used to be. Like before, I was a lot stronger, do you know what I mean? Now, I'm weak as anything, do you know what I mean? But I could just about hold 30 metres of pole.
How did it go for you, getting back into it? Did you win some matches? Did you?
Yeah, like at the time, when I went back to partridge a lot more. And that's when I started fishing it all the time, basically. And yeah, I went back, and I was going like Tuesday, Thursday, sometimes Saturday, Sunday as well, as much as I could, and I just started winning more then, do you know what I mean? And then a lad actually said to me, "Oh, did you do coaching?" At the time, there was only Neil Mage and Andy May, I think, who did the coaching. I said, "I don't really do coaching, no." I says, "You're better off seeing Andy May." And he said, "Well, you come here all the time." Like, Andy May didn't really used to go there back then. He used to go more Cudmore and near where he lives. And he's like, "I'd just like you to show me what you're doing," sort of thing. I said, "Well, I don't really know what I'm doing, do you know what I mean?" I said, "I can come and have a day with you," sort of thing. And basically that's how my coaching took off. He went away and he won an Open about a week after he cost me winning the bonus ball of 400 quid. He beat me by £1 and I was second and I was on the bonus ball. And everyone's like, "What are you doing? You shouldn't be telling him what..." I said, "Well, you know, it is what it is. I don't mind, do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, I want to win the 400 quid, but it weren't him, it was someone else." And that was like a couple of weeks after I'd given him a lesson, and he won a couple of OAPs, and then obviously the OAPs would be like, "Whoa, what's he shown you? Can I have a lesson?" I said, "Well, I don't really do lessons," you know what I mean? But obviously at the time, I was out of work, and I was thinking, well, it might be alright this, so
That's your first taste of coaching?
Yeah, and then, so I did that for, you know, an odd and literally here and there, but it started picking up. And then after about 2 years, started to get a little bit more back to normal, do you know what I mean?
Right.
And then my dad passed away, and I got some inheritance off my dad, and I thought, I still don't really know what to do. Do I want to do this coaching? Do I want to, you know, go down another route or whatever, try and invest it into something or start something? And I thought, do you know what? All the crap I've had over the last 2 years, I'm going to take a year off and just go fishing non-stop.
And is this immediately after your dad had died, you sort of made that decision?
Yeah, a couple of months or a month or two, do you know what I mean? I just thought, you know, I'm going to just go and just try and see what happens when I fish all the time.
What happened to your dad, Andy?
My dad died of throat cancer 2 years after my accident. He was fine and then literally within 4 or 5 months, it just like got him straight away, do you know what I mean? Spread quickly. Probably spotted it late. Like, my dad he'd never moan or anything like that, do you know what I mean? I remember about 6-8 months before, no, probably about a year before, maybe a little bit longer even, he's like, "Oh, I've got bad indigestion," and he was on couch for a bit. Day after, he's still on couch. He's like, "That indigestion's not going away." And that was my dad. Like, he wouldn't moan. He was having a bleeding minor heart attack. So,
never.
Yeah, he had to go to the hospital, have stents and everything put in. But he was like me. He didn't want to go doctors or hospital. And do you know what I mean? Like, I'm saying I don't want to go hospital if I have to, or doctors. I just hate places like that.
I'm the same, mate. I'm the same. I'm not scared of many things, but hospitals, frightened to death. It's
not really. There's just nothing good comes. You know, I know people recover, but yeah, it's not. I don't like being around places like that where there's stuff going on. Not nice places.
What were your relationship like with your dad? Were you close?
Yeah, we was really close. Like, fished all the time together. Worked together like for a few years, so like we'd literally work on the same shift 4 days on, and then we'd go fishing for 4 days off, and then we'd work together for like literally for 2 years, just mega close, you know what I mean? Just travel together in the same car and everything. And he wasn't a brilliant angler. He won an odd match. I remember him having a massive weight of barbel at Cudmore. He had 137 pound on Suez.
Go on, Dad.
Which at the time was like, whoa. And I remember no one had ever seen 100 and odd pound. You know, his biggest barbel weight I'd ever heard of at the time. And the Angling Times headline was, "Gordon Bennett, he's had 137 pound of barbel," or something. So yeah, that was like, go on, Dad. Do you know what I mean? He was famous for a week.
Fantastic.
But yeah, like, he just obsessed with fishing, do you know what I mean? He just loved it. Like, if he weren't messing about with pole pots, he was messing about with floats and sanding something back on his top kit, you know. So yeah, it was awesome. But yeah, he was like, me and my dad was really close.
So when obviously he passed away, time to have a year off and a year fishing.
Yeah, so I just thought, sack it, I'm going to do this for a year. And I just fished every day I could. If there was a match, I went to it. Do you know what I mean? Anywhere in the northwest, I'd fish a day match and then I'd go to the evening match. And I was only young. Do you know what I mean? I couldn't do it now.
Yeah.
Now I fish a match and it's like it's nearly all out. Yeah, I can't. You know, I don't want to. You know, I hate 6-hour matches. 5 hours plenty. But back then, I would literally fish, go and get a drink, onto a night match, get home at 11 o'clock. Do you know what I mean? Like, and this is where it's selfish because it's like you're not getting home till 11, 12 o'clock midweek. And when you look back, you know, if you're in a relationship or something like that, it's a very selfish thing to do.
You're not at home, are you? You must have never been at home. That year must have been...
Well, I'd fish probably Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, day and night. Weren't no real Friday matches. Saturday, sometimes Sunday, and maybe even a Sunday evening if there was one knocking about, or an evening match as such. But yeah, you basically like... And then like, looking back, I'd like fish the match and I'd hang around with my mates and have a brew and maybe have a fish on and get home at 8 o'clock. And it's like, no, I'm not like that now. Do you know what I mean? I finish the match, get home, because it's important that, you know, they've been to work as well, your other half, and, you know, you need to go back and see them. Do you know what I mean? And like, you've got to find that balance, which I think I have done nowadays, whereas back then I was just... If there was a 24-hour match, I'd have fished it.
I told you he was a machine.
He is an absolute machine, mate. That's ridiculous. So that this year fishing, where you're fishing for a full year, you must have won a lot of money. Is that the year that you won the Kamasan?
Yeah, I think I won the Kamasan, which was like $5,000, $3,000 I think at the time, or $5,000.
And the Kamasan at that point was a big competition. I can't remember exactly how it ran. I was a little bit young. How did it work, the Kamasan? Because it was a collective league from matches at different venues, and I can only remember...
Kamasan was more... It was a nationwide competition.
Yeah.
So it was like British Kamasan Matchman of the Year. So it was nationwide, but obviously down south, this way on, you don't really get as many people fishing matches as you do up north. Like up north, you'd probably have like your area, Sheffield, Yorkshire, Lancashire, where I live, God's country. Well, I'm actually Cheshire now, but no.
Posh boys.
There's just more people fish, and the matches are bigger, and the anglers are better. Better
than these southerners, aren't they, Andy?
They're all carpers down here, aren't they? Telbies and that. They're all, but yeah, so it was always won in the north. You know, Neil Machin won it, Andy May won it, I think Kieran won it.
I always remember people like Denty and James Dent, Ashley Clemens, who fished at Woodlands and
like for a couple of years, the rave was to go up to Woodlands, and I remember Andy May going up there chasing points when Mark Coyne and Dean Smith were all chasing it, and they were doing really well, and Andy May was doing it at the time. That year when I won it, I can't remember if it was the Kamasan, because I won it 4 times in about 5 or 6 years. When I set my stall out to go and win it, I thought, right, that's what at the time, that's what we used to. We didn't chase it because I weren't good enough. Do you know what I mean? But then I thought, I'm going to have a go at that now because it's on my doorstep, and a lot of the matches are at Partridge, and you know I don't need to really travel anywhere, and I can just fish I'd fish every Saturday, Sunday, and just try and get the points. And I ended up winning it. I couldn't believe it, and I won it 3 times, and I won the press. And I can't remember. It must have been the Kamasan, so it would have been say $3,000.
Lot of money.
And I was fishing all the time, like I said, and I kept track that year of all my match results. And I framed like top, money places. So like I'm not talking like you come third in the match, but you got your section. I'm talking money places. So first, seconds, maybe thirds, and maybe like a 60 quid for fourth or whatever. And that year I won 59 matches individually, and then I had something like 30 odd or 40 seconds. I fished something like 170 matches, so like a match every other day, if you like, throughout the year.
So you were not telling any fibs when you said you literally went fishing for a year?
Yeah, I literally went fishing for a year. I kept track of everything, and in the end I won but bearing in mind, I'm not winning I'm fishing opens, do you know what I mean? I'm not fishing festivals where you can win $3,000, or these are all open matches. And I thought, I'll see if I can do it. And I won 27 grand that year, but 3 of it was through opens, through the Kamasan, and the rest was through opens. But it cost me about 15 to go. So you could survive, but then I'm thinking, well, I've had a mega year this year, do you know what I mean? And you ain't really going to replicate that, do you know what I mean? So I'd have to do that all, you can't really, work feasible.
Did you set out that year and keep a record because you wanted to see if you could make a living from going match fishing?
I wanted to see how much.
And what were the thoughts at the end of that year?
You can't do it, no chance. You can't fish opens, and do you know what I mean? I fish festivals now, and festivals are a lot, the 3 days. So this year I fished a festival at Hayfield, 3 days, picked up 1,200 quid for winning it. And then I went to Tunnel Barn, picked up 1,200 quid in 3 days again. And then Whiteacres, I was second twice, so 1,500 quid plus whatever you've won throughout the week. So in 12 days or 4 festivals this year, that's all I've fished, 4 festivals this year. But you've won 6 or 7 grand. Do you know what I mean? If you wanted to be a full-time angler and fish, but then I've got costs to come out of that as well. Oh, and I fished Westwood where I was second. So let's say I fished 5 festivals and I've won 8 grand. Probably 1,500 to 2 grand on expenses, maybe.
Travel,
probably a little bit less than that, because there's only Whiteacres, which is accommodation expensive wise. Whiteacres probably cost you 800 quid a week or something like that. So yeah, probably 2 grand, couple of grand. But what I'm trying to say here is you could fish 100 opens and win them all, and 100 quid average, it's 10 grand. But you've got 100 bait bills, 100 day tickets, 100 pools. Do you know what I mean? You can't just fish opens and expect to make a living. You need help and support. Do you know what I mean? And I'm lucky in the position I'm in now because I'm good mates with Adam. I have been for 10 years.
Adam Rooney. And he's looked after me for the past 10 years with Guru and things like that. And you need that sponsorship and that help along, to do it for a living, which is obviously what I then wanted to try and do, and sort of pushed on from there. After that year, I was like, right, I need to do a bit of coaching, or I need to, I can't just go fishing all the time. What were the next stage then? So, because a lot of people, especially, there'll be a lot of young anglers, I know there is out there, and they look at yourself and they think, Andy Bennett, he goes fishing for a living, which now I'd arguably say you did, but when you were their age, when we're talking back in 2010 and 2011, when we've just been talking about, where did you go from that mad year of fishing and realising you can't make a living from fishing? How did you end up where you did there? What were the next step?
I just basically went into coaching more. So I was like, right, I need to supplement. I still want to do my fishing, but I need to, get some form of income here now. So I can't go back to manual work because my back won't take it. I could do a day's work and then I won't be able to move the next day. So I basically then decided to do, take a bit of coaching. I got a website designed, spent the money getting a website designed, advertising it a little bit. And to be honest, I had a lot of people asking me at the time as well, and I was turning a lot of them down. So as soon as they seen it, it was mad surge. And because Andy May and Neil Machin sort of pioneered it professionally, if you like, and did it for a couple of years, it was a bit more accepted. Because everybody needs a coach in any sport. Footballers get coached, tennis, everybody. But in fishing, it was a bit well, I don't really need a coach. You don't really have coaches in fishing. But then when people see other people doing well off the back of it, it's oh yeah, I'll have a bit of that. Do you know what I mean? If it, cost me whatever, I can win that back in a month. And then I've got that knowledge forever. Do you know what I mean? I've shown the right way to do it. And that sort of carried on then for about 2 years. And it was alright. I was going fishing regular, coaching, learning my trade really quickly. But again, like learning from other people as well. You need other people to learn from. You can't. I go fishing every day of the week, and if I've no one to pick bits up of, there's only so much you can learn. Do you know what I mean? It's a bit like with my pool now. I can practice, and I might get to say 70% of the potential that I could get to. But for me to go to that next level, then I need to look at, right, I need to get a coach in, and he'll tell me where I'm going wrong. And then you can go that next 10%, and then the other 5% until you reach your potential. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, like I was learning quickly.
It must have made you a hell of a lot sharper in your own fishing, being on the bank more. Did it?
Yeah, it does. Like if you don't go for a bit, you get a little bit rusty. You're not in tune with places. But then you get to a certain level, I think, where you understand it. And for me, it was like, yeah, it sort of clicks now. Probably like, I don't know, 5 years ago maybe. And it just clicked that, maggot fishing is very similar to meat fishing. Just a different bait, but same principles. You can kinder it, you can pot a little bit. You can do so much with meat and maggots because the baits you can throw. Whereas micro pellets, there's a certain way to fish them. You can only really pot them. You don't really loose feed them. But the attraction of them is this, and then you've got hard pellets, bigger baits, and all of a sudden it's like, right, there's a set way to fish like this. There's a set way to fish like this, and you learn your trade, and then you just got to apply it at the right times. And then you're like, right, I've seen, I've never been to this venue. Right, what I need to do now is. It's small carp. He's told me it's small carp. It's this deep. Right. I remember when I fished this place. What I need to do is apply this to that, and hopefully it works. And then you go and see how many fish are in there, blah blah blah, and that's how you sort of get better at fishing. Is like your experience. But with any sport, I always say to people, it stems down to the technique. Do you know what I mean? Like if you need to go and fish a certain venue and pole shallow is the way to do it, you need to know the technique of fishing pole shallow. If you go to another venue and you go and fish waggler, you need to know how to fish a waggler. And then you go to another venue and it's margin fishing, you need to know how to fish margins so that you can. So then it don't matter what lake you go to, you can apply it to it. But if someone said to me, right Andy, there's a ball, you can have a brilliant angler, but he's brilliant at what they do. Like pool, for example. I'll reference pool because I enjoy playing it, but the best snooker players who pot balls on a massive table and tiny pockets, and it's a totally different game to pool. And then you look at 9-ball pool, it's totally different again. So like the disciplines of our sport, I couldn't just go and pick up a bolognese rod, for example, and start fishing a bolo on a fast flowing river wide because I've never done it, and it doesn't come into my fishing. I can't just go and pick up a fly rod and start. I can't even cast a fly rod. I've tried, it's really hard. But you know what I mean, like it's all technique. You're only whipping the line back and flicking it forward, but it's that technique that, do you know what I mean, that's what you've got to try and perfect. Your
coaching must help you be more rounded, because I'm assuming when people come for a day's coaching, certain people want to learn about margin fishing, other people want to learn about shallow fishing, across fishing, short fishing, fishing on the bottom down the middle of a canal lake. So does that make you better in your own match fishing, being on the bank, doing that in the week, maybe not necessarily fishing matches?
Yeah, because obviously if I'm teaching somebody, right, this is the correct way to do it. So when I'm sat on the box, it sort of becomes second nature. You don't get lazy because you're teaching it to people. So all of a sudden it's like, yeah, well I can't really, I should be doing this because this is what I'm trying to tell them to do. So yeah, it sort of becomes second nature then, and you do it just without thinking. And sometimes like you take things for granted. People will ask me stuff and I'm thinking, well, yeah, that's pretty obvious in it, but it's not obvious if you don't. So like I always try and explain to them, give them an analogy or something like, this is how the fish feed. So you have this little dinner plate, and once your maggots have crawled off that dinner plate, for example, there's nothing left for them to go back to. If I put a pint of maggots on this table now and they all crawl off, why are the fish going to eat on this table? They're not. They're going to go and eat off the floor where the bait is. So you've got to try. I try to explain it to them in that, so they can understand it in that sense, and then they think, oh right, yeah, like a lot of it's common sense. But if you've never been shown, it's it's hard. It's not easy to.
You can't just pick it up. You can't just pick that kind of thing up.
It's like when you watch quiz shows and you think, how do you not know that? But if you don't know it, it's not that easy.
It's not going to magically come into your head.
I've got to say, that's just blown my mind, to be honest, the way you've just said it. Like, I'd never have thought of it that way.
Toby, I've watched Andy Fish, obviously, filming for Guru and what have you. And, like, I think some of it as well is natural. Because I watch you pick up some maggots and throw them in. And no one picks up 10 maggots and throws them around the float as accurate as you. But I see you do it so often. And it's exactly what you referenced earlier. Like, you'd be sat there having a chat, having a coffee. Yeah, just throw 10 maggots in. And I'm like, he's trying to talk to me while we're filming. And I'm like, look how tight them 10 maggots have just landed.
He just do it without even looking.
Yeah, it's annoyingly natural. Another question. This is coaching related, Andy. I want you to be honest with me on this one. Yeah. Do you enjoy it?
I enjoy it when they want to listen. If somebody wants to learn, then it makes me enthusiastic. The worst thing you can have is when someone books a day with you. And obviously, I'm there to earn money as well. But I don't want it to be a long, dragging day. So if they're not listening to you, and it's like, yeah, and, they just want to fish because they've started catching fish. And I always try and say to them, look, it doesn't matter what you catch. It's what you take away with you. So if you're not listening to me now and it doesn't sink in and you go away and you're back to square one, it's pointless, and that's when it gets annoying. And when I must admit, I could probably count on one, maybe two hands over the past 5 years. But you get an odd one that doesn't listen.
Can you give me an example? Can you tell me your worst ever coaching experience? Have you got a story for that one? You don't have to mention the name.
Just basically a day when the guy never listened, and he was just like, well, such a body does it like this. And I'm like, all right, yeah, well, I'm just sort of explaining my thinking behind it, and this is how I do it, and I think it works for me, and blah blah blah. And they just sort of like, not listening to your opinion. And it's sort of like, well, why don't you go and book a lesson with him? Do you know what I mean? Like,
did you say that to him?
No, I'm not that rude, but I just think, like, this is you're not benefiting from this. Do you know what I mean? That was some time ago, to be fair. But most of them nowadays, they come and they know exactly what they want to learn. It's very rare you get someone who they're just like, yeah, whatever you think. Most of them are like, I want to learn mudline fishing. I want to learn this type of fishing. It's like they come to specialise in something that they're struggling with.
Interesting.
And they're like, I want to do shallow fishing. I want you to show me all the variables of this and that. And a lot of it for me is 95% of my coaching is situated around F1 fishing as well. So snake lake type fishing. And, I don't actually coach during the winter, so I get a lot of people asking me now. But from December to February, pretty much hardly do any coaching whatsoever. Well, I don't coach. Recharge the batteries ready for the summer when it's just manic and hectic.
What's the reason for not coaching in winter?
Because a lot of people, obviously, I only coach at Partridge, unless I do a group day or something. But basically, you sit down on a snake lake in the winter, pleasure fishing, and the fish just back away. So they're just wasting the money. So I always say to them, like, if they're really desperate, I'll take them out, but I'll tell them, you may blank, do you know what I mean? Like, and sometimes people are like, I'm not bothered. But when it's that bad, you might as well sit here with me and you and talk you through it, because you're not going to learn anything because your float's not going under. So I say, right, ship out to 30 metres, right, do this. Nothing happens. It's like, whereas when the fish are responding, you say, right, feed a little bit less bait. See how that did this? Yeah. And when you see it for your own eyes, like, right, I know what you mean now. Because a lot of people will be like, yeah, but it's not sinking in. It's like, right, Matt, what I want you to do is cue at the bottom of that cue ball there. So talking about pool. And I want you to get to your bridge nice and low so you can get loads of screw back on it and, follow through with the cue. Yeah. But then you might go and do it. And I'm like, no, that's not right. But if I don't see you do it for myself, or you don't see it for yourself, it's not the same. Do you know what I mean? So you've got to be getting a response from the fish to sort of coach, and in the winter it's pointless.
Any standout coaching days? Obviously you've coached for 5 years now, pretty seriously as your main income. Any standout days that have been really memorable?
Not
Not coached any
really.
supermodels or anything like that?
No, luckily not. Nothing really like stand out. I mean, you meet some characters. You know, I've coached solicitors, lawyers. One that was interesting is a lad over from your way, actually. And he was telling me like how fishing basically saved his life. You know, he was a drug addict and he overcome it, and I wouldn't have even had a clue unless he told me. Do you know what I mean?
Wow.
But he was dead open and honest, and I was like, whoa, no way. Do you know what I mean? Like, and yeah, he sort of like, he said, oh yeah, you know, like I was a drug addict, I recovered from it, and it basically, fishing turned his life around. And I seen him last year and he was buzzing. Do you know what I mean? And so yeah, like things like that. You know, you meet all sorts of people, policemen, everything. Do you know what I mean? Like, you get everybody because it's just their job at the end of the day, and they just want to improve. So, you know, I've had instructors who do other sort of things. You know what I mean? I've had karate coaches, and you know, they're coaches and stuff. So like, I might turn around and say, you know, I'm not being. Oh no, I understand. Like, I coach the same. Do you know what I mean? Like, all right, you know, I'm not going to hit you with a stick or anything, but if I keep going over something, it's because I'm trying to drill it into your head. So if I repeat myself, it's because you're not doing it, and I want you to make sure that you're doing it. So it's like second nature.
They know what coaching's all about as well.
Yeah, and he's like, oh no, I totally understand. Do you know what I mean?
Doesn't
so, yeah.
give you a roundhouse kick or anything
Yeah.
like that.
You've done that wrong.
Hit him on the head and he chops me in the neck. Yeah. But yeah, you just meet loads of different characters and different people, so that's good because it mixes it up, and it's, you know, it's nice, sociable. It gets you, you know, I need that social element in my life as well. Like, I like mixing and being outside as well. Like, I don't like I couldn't work from home and things like that. It's not for me. I like to be out on.
I can see it. Spending so much time on the bank then, Andy, coaching, obviously you seem to be fishing a hell of a lot more than your average man. How do, like, other people, your friends and fellow anglers, how do they perceive that?
Don't know really. Some people, I suppose, look at it and think, well, it's all right for you. You go fishing all the time. You're going to be good. Do you know what I mean? But like I said to you, like, doing the right things. Do you know what I mean? I know people who fish just as much as me, and they don't really progress because they're not doing the right things. And then other people look at it and they think, well, I'd be that good if I went 4 times a week or whatever. But you've got to be doing the right things. Do you know what I mean? And
what are the right things?
Well, you've got to be having your technique right. You've got to know what baits to fish, how to fish a certain method. You know, I know a lot of people who fish all the time, but I think you have like people who know how to win and people who do well, and you know, there's loads of brilliant anglers out there. But for example, you take someone like Steve Ringer, like, he always seems to win, do you know what I mean? Like, whatever it is, he's won the Iberian Masters, he's won the World Champs, might even be European champion, but
Whiteacres Festivals, Park Dean Masters Final,
Fishermania, he's won everything, do you know what I mean? He's just a serial winner. And, you know, I fished this year against Steve, twice head to head.
In the Fishing Gurus. We can't say any more about the result, by the way.
I didn't know if we could actually say that yet or not, but because this will be aired before it. But
I've got
yeah,
a little
like
something up there for you though.
Look at him.
Look at him there. Yeah, Macy holding me back, so I was just going to fill him in.
That's a quality picture, that.
But yeah, like, and you can see why, because he's got that intensity about him. He's just like, he's aware of everything you're doing. Do you know what I mean? He's watching you all the time. He knows exactly where he's up to. And when it comes out, you'll see, like, they were 2 brilliant matches. Do you know what I mean? And some people have got that edge to win, And then other people make excuses why they don't win. Well, I've got to work all the time and blah, blah, blah. Steve, he doesn't fish 5 matches a week.
No, you're two very different people, really.
He'd be lucky if he fishes, what, 1 a week, once a fortnight? And then he might have a world champ. Do you know what I mean? But he can still go out there and compete with the best. And that's because he understands it. He's put his time in. And he's just a serial winner. Do you know what I mean? He doesn't have to fish 4 or 5 times a week to be brilliant. Do you know what I mean? Because he's already brilliant and he's learnt his craft. And at some point it'll kick in. Do you know what I mean? And people will realise, oh, right, yeah, do you know what I mean? Like it did a little bit with me sort of 5-6 years ago, and I felt, yeah, everything seems to make sense now. Do you know what I mean? It's becoming easier. I still have to go out and practice and stuff, but, you know, the other side to it is like when you're fishing all the time and it is your living, you know, some people think like, you know, oh, I've got to go to work, me, so I can't be that good. Well, even if you can get out 2 days a week or once a week, you can still be to a good level as long as you're learning the right things and doing the right things. I think some people make more excuses why not than why they can, do you know what I mean?
I hear it quite a bit on the bank myself, mate. Obviously fishing a lot of matches and travelling about, and I think sometimes people think that Andy Bennett and Steve Ringer don't have a missus and a house and a mortgage and a man den in the garden and stuff and they don't have to do their house up or the boiler dump. Like, I think that they don't realise that you do lead an absolutely normal life, and you've got to go fishing 4 days a week to do that. Why don't they go fishing 4 days a week and try and do it?
Yeah, that's it. I've had that in the past, you know what I mean, where people say, oh, well, you know, it's alright for you can go fishing 4 days a week, but I can't. I say, well, why can't you? Do you know what I mean? Like, quit your job and go fishing. Do you know what I mean? Like, what's stopping you? All you have to do is quit your job and then you go fishing every day.
And just try it for yourself.
Well, you know, I've got an house to pay for. Well, so do I. Do you know what I mean? Like, these are the sacrifices, or, you know, the things that you know, if it don't work, you have to go back to work. Do you know what I mean? But you've got to be happy with what you're doing. Do you know what I mean? And you've got to sometimes gamble a little bit. Do you know what I mean? And it helps, like, when you get support. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've got the support from Guru now, which allows me to fish a bit more. And obviously with my coaching, I can sort of financially keep money coming in coaching, and that allows me to do my fishing, and, you know, I can do more festivals. But every time you go on a festival, you don't win anything, you're not earning anything. So it's what you want out of life as well. Do you know what I mean? Like, what I'm doing, I'm never going to be rich, I'm never going to be a millionaire, but I've no aspirations to be a millionaire or be rich or run a massive business empire. Do you know what I mean? Like, everybody has their own thing that they want to achieve, and for me, I want to win titles at fishing. I want to enjoy something I do and turn my hobby into my job, and luckily I've been able to do that. Do you know what I mean?
When did you think that you had started to do that? You've obviously had your accident, you've lost your dad, it's led to a year of full-on fishing, and then the coaching's come about. All of a sudden you're spending more time on the bank, you're seeing your fishing improve. When did it get to that point, probably with the support from sponsors, whereby you thought, right, I am winning titles now, I can become champion at this, I can win Fishermania, I can win festivals? When did you start to feel like you were doing that?
I'll be honest, I never felt like, I knew I was capable, because I've seen some people win titles and I think, surely I'm as good as him, do you know what I mean? Or maybe even better than him, like, surely, like, but I just thought,
people like Ringer and Scotland.
Yeah. But like, I just thought, I'm never going to be that lucky to win a big money final. Do you know what I mean? Because I've been in, I think it took me, I'd been in 13 finals. I think I've been in 16 now total, like, big money finals, like 25 Part D Fishermania.
£25,000 plus finals.
But first 13, I never had a chance of winning one. I thought, I'm never going to get that lucky, do you know what I mean? Like, and then I win 2 back-to-back year after year, and it's like, oh right, that wasn't as hard as what I thought. But leading up to that, you just like, you're not getting the chances. I've never walked away from a match and thought, barring maybe the 2017 or 16 match this, when Rob Wootton won, the top three was all in a line and I was on the other bank. I think you were sat behind Matty Dawes that day.
I did, yeah.
And I caught late on a waggler. And what I know now, which is all hindsight, but if I'd have had the right floats and a few more options in my armoury and had a fish waggler from front to back non-stop and known the venue just a little bit better, yeah, I could potentially have caught another 3 or 4 fish. But other than that, which would have been a big ask, because I only caught, say, 12, so I'm asking to catch another 20% of what I've caught, 25%, which is a lot. It's an hour's worth of fishing. And I was catching well late, and I went from nowhere to 4th, but I was only like £12 off winning it, which was probably 2 fish on there. But other than that, I can honestly say, hand on heart, I've never felt like I had a chance of winning. Even when I was second in the Golden Reel, I was 30 odd pound behind. So even though I was runner up, I never felt like I could have won that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was miles behind in reality. But when it sort of started clicking, I felt like I'm making a living out of this now and doing well. It was probably about 5 years ago, something like that. And obviously, with the support of Adam, Rooney and Guru, the last 2 years I've gone full-time consultant with Guru, which again just makes it easier and just allows me to achieve more stuff. And over the last sort of 2 or 3 years, it's just been surreal, really. Like, my results.
It's scary. You're not the kind to mention exactly what they are, but like, I know Whiteacres has played a massive part. You've won the Tunnel Bar Masters, which I consider to be one of the hardest competitions to win. Did you win the first 2 of them?
Yeah, I won the first 2 of them, yeah.
And like them, they are tight. You say you've never won a big money final for them first 13 attempts or whatever, but people go a lifetime are going to Whiteacres 4 times a year and don't win a Whiteacres festival. And how many have you won there?
I won 2 back-to-back, and then my last 2, so my last 4 have been, no, my last 5 I think, I've had 3 seconds and 2 wins. But I've been like 6 times I've been within £2 of winning. Or one of the times might have been about £6 or £7, but I've been within a fish or 2 like 6 times of winning a festival. Once was 10 ounce, once was 7 ounce. Do you know what I mean? Like,
super consistent.
That extra point would have won me the festival, and it's like, you're not won a final, you're not won a festival at White, because it's like, it's never going to happen. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can't really. And then, but I've learnt, like, over the years, fishing the festivals and stuff like that. Like, the last 2 festivals I fished before lockdown, the Tunnel Bar Masters and the Westwood, I felt like I had a perfect festival. If I'd have won the festival, I'd have gone, yep, I fish really well. But I come 2nd and 4th. But I don't have any regrets, because I feel like that's the best I could have got from my pegs, do you know what I mean? And sometimes you can't win. You could be the best angler on the bank, but you don't have the chance to win because you've not drawn so well or whatever. And then sometimes, I've had a lot of luck as well. Like when I won the Masters the 2nd time, I beat Des by 2 ounce overall on weight.
Des Ship, one of the best commercial anglers on the planet.
And Andy Powers was in my section on the last day, and I beat him by £2. And I think Tom caught it on video, actually.
Tom Scully,
Catchmore was filming it, and as I went to net the fish, it's pinged off, and I've netted it. And it was like £4 or £5. I put it in the net.
I can remember Tom was filming on his phone at the time, and I think he'd got you and Power both playing that fish. I can remember the video.
And I caught a carp. I had like 6 carp in the last 20 minutes. I was getting signs and liners off fish, and I was like, right, slow down, think about it. So I stopped loose feeding and just put a pot on, and just thought, I know this fish there, just catch it. So I went in, tapped 10 pellets in. It went straight under, I caught a carp. Went in, tapped 10 pellets in, straight under, caught. And I was like, why didn't I do this before? Do you know what I mean? It's too late now. Powers has been catching one a chuck. And I netted, about 10 minutes to go or something, I netted that fish. And then I went back in, I caught one right near the death. But that fish literally was about £5. I beat Andy Powers by £2 and beat Des by 2 ounce. Do you know what I mean? And that won me the Masters. So that 2 ounce was like, I won a Dyer pole worth about £4,000, an extra 1,500 quid in cash. It was worth about £5,000, that fish. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, wow, I can't believe I've won it, because I had a terrible week. I got beat off the next peg on the first day, but luckily he wasn't in my section because I chose to fish the wrong bait. And it started hammering it down with rain, and I was fishing maggot shallow, and I thought, oh, my maggots are going everywhere. So I got up off my box, jumped down the hill, got my casters out of the van, ran back to my peg, started loose feeding casters, started getting one a chuck. And I was like, why didn't I do this before? Because I know he's catching on caster next to me. And it was Andy Bailey. And I'm thinking, well, he's on a slightly better peg than me, but I weren't really thinking about him because he's not in my section. I was like, well, I'm not bothered if he's catching. But I should have learnt off him, do you know what I mean? Like, hold on a minute, he's catching. And I was just a bit like, he's on a better peg, so he's going to be catching a bit more. And he weren't like thingy, but I think I had £101, Andy had about 103, but he was in a better peg. But I had £70 in the last hour and 40 minutes shallow, and I was like, and the only reason I did it was because it started raining. I was forced to do it. It's like, you know, that bit of, if it hadn't rained, I'd have carried on with maggots and caught an odd fish and probably come second in my section because nobody was catching a great deal to my left. But that's the sort of luck you need to win stuff, do you know what I mean? And like, yeah, like you need a lot of luck as well along the way to win stuff. But yeah, like about 5 years ago, I would say, when I started thinking, right, I'm entering these events, and all of a sudden you start to win a few, do you know what I mean? And then your confidence grows and your experience grows and you handle the pressure better, and then it becomes easier to win. You know, you still got to draw the pegs, don't get me wrong, because fishing's not fair. You can't win off every peg, and I accept that nowadays, do you know what I mean? So as long as I fish okay, if I draw rubbish and come nowhere, as long as I'm happy with my performance, I won't beat myself up. But if I've drawn well and I feel like I've done something wrong, then I really critique myself, do you know what I mean? Think, right, what have I done wrong? And then I'll dig a bit deeper and try and find a solution, do you know what I mean?
What's the key to winning at Whiteacres? Probably some of the most prestigious festivals in country, 180 anglers. You've been, I'd say, the most consistent angler there last 3 or 4 years. Yeah, what would you say the key is to winning? There's going to be a lot of people listening that fish them festivals, want to go and fish a festival, have fished them in the past.
I would say, like, because the fishing's so varied, is knowing what you're fishing for is straight away a big thing. Because if you're fishing for, say, carassios on jennies or carp, you know, someone could catch carassios next peg to you and you not catch any. So it's knowing where the fish live, a bit of venue knowledge comes into it. You know, like take jennies for example, the carassio love that open water, but sometimes you don't catch them and you end up having to fish carp tactics, do you know what I mean? Sometimes you fish pole shallow with pellets, but like carassios, they don't really eat casters as such, whereas 4mm pellets is better. But then if you want to catch the bigger, older F1s, casters is better than 4mm pellets. So bait decisions, do you know what I mean? Like knowing what you're fishing for. And again, this is what I was saying about technique. If you know how to catch F1s down the edge in 3 foot of water, and that's the tactic, you know, take back Twin Oaks for example, right, they've been catching down the edge. So I say to somebody, how did they catch yesterday? Oh, they all caught in the edges.
So back Twin Oaks is a lake at Whiteacres, full of F1s. Yeah,
and there's some carp as well in the middle bit, where, well, third of the way up the lake. So them pegs you might catch on a feeder, whereas other pegs you spend more time fishing on the pole for the F1s. And then take the front Twin Oaks, which is the opposite lake to it. One end can be full of carp. This year I had £136 and I had 120 of it was F1s fishing worm and caster. If I'd have gone there and fished hard pellet, like Nathan Watson did next to me, you wouldn't have caught next to nothing on it, do you know what I mean? Like, it was the wrong bait, the wrong sort of way to do it. So decision making like that, you can't go there and go, I'm going to fish to my strengths, because a lot of people say, oh, fish to your strengths. No, you've got to be able to adapt, do you know what I mean? Like, if it's meat, don't be ignorant and fish hard pellets. Just go and fish meat. Like, learn to fish every single bait, so that when it's required, you go there and you go, right, this is what I'm going to fish, because this is what they want to eat. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, like this year when we went, a lot of maggots come into it the second week, live maggots. Pretty unheard of for whiteacres, but it's because there's no nuisance fish such as little roach and little skimmers and things that are mithering you. So you could sit there with 3 live maggots on and wait for a bite off a better fish, whereas in the past you couldn't do that. So you've got to pick the right baits, and you've got to be... Nobody's in tune with it because nobody goes there every week.
Whiteacres is
Everyone,
UK, other end of country. It's nobody's local venue.
No, everybody travels there. Nobody gets to practice. I mean, they can do if they want, but nobody does really. So you get down there and you're just fishing, and basically you're making it up as you go along until you fished a couple of days and you gain a little bit of info of how the lakes are fishing. So you've got to know, right, what area this is the fish I'm fishing for. You know, you go to Porth. Some pegs are great skimmer areas, some pegs are great roach areas, some pegs are great bream areas, but then the bream might not feed, so you've got to have a backup of this, and it takes a lot to win there. And I think adaptability is the biggest thing. Do you know what I mean? Whereas I could go and fish a festival at, say, Tunnel Barn or Westwood, and it's really easy fishing, pretty much fishing shallow and down the edge, and you only really need them 2 tactics throughout the week. Whereas whiteacres is a lot more versatile, a lot more different styles. One day you're fishing for big carp, then you might be fishing for big carp in open water on a rod and line, then you might be fishing for silverfish on a natural lake, and that's why I love the place as well. And you know, we used to go there as kids, me, my brother, my dad, my family and all that, and we actually scattered my dad's ashes down on one of the lakes called Pollering down there.
Wow.
And I remember one match, actually going off subject a little bit, but we went down there and I drew peg 20, and we used to always go on the point 19, 20. We used to go on 45, which is next to 19.
Yeah.
19, 20 and 21 is like a point facing the main thing.
And this is just you, your brother and your dad pleasure fishing?
Me, my 2 brothers and my dad. We'd leave our house, because we go there 4 times a year. This is before I started fishing the festivals. We're talking, well, 10 years plus ago, before my dad passed away. But we used to go down there, fish on the point, and we'd leave our house 12 o'clock on a Friday night, get there for like 5 o'clock. Don't know why, because we'd sit waiting for a breakfast, and as soon as the breakfast was open, we'd get a butty and just go and get on the pegs first light. So we always had them pegs, and that was like the same every year. My dad just couldn't wait to set off, and we're like, it's 12 o'clock at night, like, can we not just go at like 4 or 5 in the morning? He's like, no, we'll get down there early. Do you know what I mean? So we used to, that every time we used to go there, and we was due to go to Whiteacres for one last trip with my dad, but he got too poorly. Me and my brothers went down anyway. He's like, no, you go down, I'll be fine. And it was that day we got down there, travelled all the way there, and we got a phone from the hospital, so we all literally got back in the car 2 hours later and drove straight back home.
Wow.
But we ended up scattering his ashes on that.
And you get the phone call that he died?
No, he didn't die, but he was ill. He died the day after.
Right.
But yeah, he's like, he seemed absolutely fine. Like, you get people sometimes get a second wind before they die, so you can be really poorly and then they seem okay, and he's like, no, honestly, just go, it's fine. Like, no, I can't go. Honestly, just go. Well, he seems fine, do you know what I mean? Be alright, we'll just go for a few days, because he wants us to go. And then he was poorly, just sort of like take a lull quick, do you know what I mean? It's horrible, like, but yeah, like, that's why it means so much to me. So that's basically next on my hit list is the Part D Masters. That's one that I would really love to win, that final. But I wanted to win a festival, and I managed to win one, and then like a bus, you know, literally I won one the week after. I won the Preston as well. So
back-to-back festival wins at Whiteacres.
Yeah, it's like took me a while to win one, and then it's like you get a bit of luck. I think the festival before I was second and Paul Holland beat me, but luckily he's my sharing partner, so that was alright. So I didn't mind him beating me because I had half his winnings, but I was like, God, you've won 3 or 4 already, like, can you not let me win one? And yeah, that was, I think that might have been the Guru or something, the Guru festival. But yeah, we've had a couple of like first seconds where
proper clean sweeps
where I've been second and he's won it. yeah, so it was nice to finally win one, and then I won 2, and he was actually second when I won my second one, and I netted a fish after time, and I felt dead bad because I foul looked it in the wing, and it took me 7 minutes after time to land it, and I beat him. I won my section then, which meant he would have beat me on weight, and I ended up beating him. So when I was telling him, I was thinking, right, I better shut up now because I'm rubbing it in a bit. I could tell he wanted to win. It's not about the money. We're getting the same amount of money because we're sharing anyway. But you just want to win. But I was like, nah, you've won 4 already.
What did he say when you told him a foul looked to 7-pounder, landed it after time, got it out, beat you with it? Because I know what Paul's like, right, Toby?
Yeah,
Paul Holland is a guru angler, the most competitive, serious, wants to win man. Bennett, super chilled out. Yeah, mate, I just netted a 7-pounder after time and beat you. What did he do?
Ah, well done, mate. That was it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Absolutely awesome.
He won't begrudge me winning, do you know what I mean? He'd be made up for me, really.
On a serious note, I think I love me fishing, and I take my match fishing super serious, and sat listening to you talk about Whiteacres there, I think that you summed it up in one word, and it's just to be all round. Is that 2 words? I think that's 2 words. All round.
You'll be right.
But that versatility and not going with a preconceived plan and fishing to how the fish want to be caught rather than fishing how you want to catch them.
Yeah.
What a amazing bit of advice for people fishing them kinds of festivals. Love it. Absolutely love it. Any before we get on to the super big wins, any real regrets or any super near misses that you could have won in terms of titles before you got onto the big uns?
I had a close one last year on that Fish North final, which was like 10 grand to the winner and 2nd grand to second, so it was like an 8 grand jump, do you know what I mean? And nobody had ever fished the lake, and I remember Baz, who does a lot of the filming for me and Paul on our things, he was helping run the competition. He's like, come and have a go, do you know what I mean? Like, buy a ticket or 2. I was like, well, I don't really know any of the venues. I'll have one for the Oaks because you'll get a day's fishing. I actually went up there and won the match with like a mega low weight for the new lakes. I was like £110, which is, they catch 200-300 pounds on there, 400 pounds. And
just rocked up and won.
Yeah, and I drew in a corner peg, and a lot of people were like, oh, it's not brilliant, and I couldn't believe it because I ended up winning the match with a weight which like you wouldn't even win a section with, and I was just like, well, I'm having a nice day's fishing. I caught maggots long on the bottom, which nobody ever really does. They just fish in the margins, but because it was every pegging, it basically just fished hard, and it was almost like a winter type spring match, do you know what I mean? Not like a summery type match. Anyway, so I qualified for this final, and I was like, oh, right, so I couldn't put any time and effort in. All I knew was it was a little carp, and I heard that they had a match the week before and they caught on slop. So the first time I ever went there.
And the venue in question's Forest Lane.
Forest Lane, yep, and on the Arena Lake. And first time I ever went there, it only had one match on it, do you know what I mean? But I had £180, set a new record on slop shallow. And then the second time I went, it was windy, and I thought, right, no, it was a semi-final, that was it. It weren't a second match. You got a practice match each, so 32 finalists, you got a practice match, and then the 32 finalists, or semi-finalists, got knocked down to 16, so the final was every other peg. But on the semi-final, it was every single pegging. And I thought, we've had a bit of rain, I can't just go there and that fish slop shallow. So I took some maggots with me, and I absolutely emptied it on maggots on the bottom, just loose feeding maggots. Like, I had about £130 or something, but there was some really good anglers in my area who only caught like 40, 50, 60, 70 pound. And I thought, that was good, do you know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm going to do. The windier the better. And then come the final, I was so confident because I was like, I know exactly how to fish maggots for these little stamp fish, do you know what I mean? shortish or clemps, dead positive rigs, so your bites show up quick and things like that. There's no place for like light rigs when you're fishing for these. There is when you're shallow fishing, but when you're fishing on the deck as well. And a lot of people would like, well, you're not going to catch 140 pound fishing on the deck, but when they're that greedy and hungry, you don't really miss bites off them. You know, it's not like F1s, they're little carp, they're eating machines. So I was fishing like a 4x16 float, dropping my rig straight in, catch a fish. Not really like standard carp fishing. I'd put a pouch full of maggots in and try and catch 2 fish then off that pouch full. And I thought, I've got this sussed, do you know what I mean? I've got it sorted. And then come the final, there was just one little area of the lake that wasn't brilliant. And and obviously like there was a gate as well, and there's just a few spectators, and I had £151 in the final. And
Are you in this area you consider not to be brilliant?
Not to be brilliant, and I wanted it a wet, windy, cold day, so it suited maggot fishing. And the conditions went bright, sunny, flat, calm, little slight warm breeze blowing to the opposite end, and it was like glass where we was. It had no ripple, and the only regret I had is like you're catching quite quick, and I had no intention of going past 6-7 metres because I was fishing on the bottom, so I only got 6-7 metres of pole out, and I thought if I'm going to win this, what I'm going to do. But it just felt like, even though I was catching quite quick at early doors, it just felt like the fish was always backing off because there was no ripple. It felt like I had to feed them into my peg every time. And don't get me wrong, sometimes it might take 1 feed, 2 feed, then you catch one, and it might only take 20 seconds. But when the fishing was good, you'd go out, if you had a ripple, you'd slap your rig in, like when you're fishing shallow, your elastic would come out, you'd loose feed, everything's just so much quicker. And I just felt like I need this tingy bit of ripple. And the last hour, it just sort of dipped on me, the fishing, and it was hard to keep the fish coming. And I just feel like if I'd have just gone another section further, because like the ripple was starting at say 10 metres and I'm fishing 6-7, I just needed to get a little bit close to that ripple where the fish felt a bit safer maybe. That was probably one of the regrets I had, because I felt like I had everything right. Yeah, the peg was against me, but it's no excuse. Like, I probably caught 350 fish for £150. They're only like 8-9 ounce a piece, I think the average when you counted them up. And I got beat by like 3 fish. So when you're catching, close. It's 1% in it, but that's easy. That's easy to catch. You know, if they got beat by £8 and it was 20 more fish, fair enough. But 3 fish over the course of 5 hours, I know looking back, like I was happy with my performance, but again, being critical of myself, I wish I'd have had a section behind me to stick up the back of it.
Which is what you've just explained about Whiteacres. It's that adaptability, willingness to change, willingness to chase them out when you needed to.
Yeah, and I had a good weight compared to the lads either side of me, do you know what I mean? And like I felt like I had a really good match, but I know I could have caught an extra 3 fish late if I'd have just been a little bit, you know. And that's the difference between not failure but success. You know, winning and not winning. That's a small margin.
Talking about winning, Fishermania 2019, your first big money title win. What was that like?
Unbelievable, really, like so surreal. Obviously, you've got the crowd and everything like that. And like with these finals, I always put the effort in and try and make sure that I'm on the ball. I've never come away from a final thinking like, I didn't know about that, or I weren't on the right method. Do you know what I mean? I always try and put the time and effort in to make sure that I'm on the right methods and I've got all my gear right and everything else.
£50,000 up for grabs.
Yeah.
I can understand why.
Yeah, but like sometimes I'm a bit laid back and I don't have as much stuff and I borrow it off Paul and things like that. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, like I felt like leading up to the final, like I always go into finals really confident because you've put the time and effort in. Even if you've not caught in practice, what you know, practice matches, for example. I remember the first year I ever went to Hayfield, the first 4 or 5 matches, looking back now, I drew absolutely horrendous.
Hayfield Lakes, Doncaster, that's
Lakes,
where the Fishermania final is.
Yeah, and the first 4 or 5 times I went practicing, I kept drawing like corner pegs and stuff, but the wind were blowing out, I think I had like 3 out of 5 corner pegs, but I soon realised the corners are not as good unless you like end peg wind blowing in or whatever. I was drawing right in the corners as well. I basically caught nothing. Like I had 60 odd pound of skimmers the first time I went, and I was like, oh right, there's some skimmers to be caught. They don't really play a part, do you know what I mean? I was just in a bad area and there's no carp there, so I caught some skimmers. And then next 3 or 4 times, caught nothing. I was like, am I doing something wrong here? Do you know what I mean? It's like, you know, it's carp fishing, it's open waters, you know. And basically, I wasn't doing anything wrong. I just wasn't drawing any fish, but I didn't have much confidence. And then come the final, pleasure fishing, I was absolutely emptying it. I felt I had everything right, all my rigs, everything else. And when you're catching, it sort of breeds confidence, do you know what I mean? And going into this last year's Fishermania, my first Fishermania, I'd practised hard. I felt I had everything right, and I just needed to draw a peg. And it was the first time in a final that I wanted peg 5 or 6, which is permanent peg 20 and 21, corner of the island. Because I feel like there's some pole fish as well as waggler fish. But I'd never practiced this peg 6, which I drew, permanent peg 20. It's the only peg I haven't practiced. I went to practice it on the Wednesday, but Noli was cutting the grass. Noli owns the fishery. She was just doing a final trim round the fishery, just getting it
just
looking
trimming
nice.
a bush.
Trimming a bush.
She likes to trim a bush, Arnold, doesn't
yeah,
she?
she loves trimming a bush. And so she closed that side off that day, so I never got to practice it, but I practiced the other pegs, but I'd never practiced this narrow peg, so I was like, don't really know what to do you know what I mean? I was a bit like, should I fish a method? But I just felt like everything wanted to be shallow, so I was like, should I fish my waggler slightly off the island? Should I fish it tight to the island? And I was a bit it was the only peg I was uncertain of. Every other peg I knew exactly what I was going to do. And so it was a little bit of pressure because I knew I'd probably catch on the pole, but it was like, what do I do on the rod and line if the pole don't work? And basically just winged it, set a bomb up and a method and a waggler. I caught a few on the pole early, which was a decent-ish start. And then mid-match, sort of just messing about, having a go on a bomb. That wasn't very good. I caught 1 on a method, 2 on a bomb, 6 or 7 on a waggler. So the waggler was still good, but I got caught, like, there's a little twig on the island and there was a board underneath the water. So one chuck I've chucked out, my waggler's landed and my float's sat there. I've gone to wind in, I'm stuck on the far bank. It's gone over the back of this board. And to be fair, Andy Kinder did tell me about it. And it was a bit windy as well, and I just cast a little bit in front of me, trying to get tighter to the island. So you've got whatever 1,000 people stood behind you and you're stuck on the island. It's like, oh dear, do you know
Never
what I mean?
happens
Like,
to Andy Bennett, that kind of
so,
thing.
snapped off, and I was like, right, pick my other rod up, not a problem. Picked my other rod up, chucked it out, 4 foot off the island. That's no good. I need to get tighter, so I started peeling a little bit of line off. And the island's on a bit of an angle. And I chucked out again. That's nice. I had about 10 nice casts, caught a fish. Wind caught it, caught this little twig, pulled that off. All of a sudden, I'm catching it every time I go in. So it's like, pressure's mounting now, do you know what I mean? So I need to get tight to the island to get a bite. But I've got this twig now overhanging, so every time I cast in, I'm catching it. And it's windy as well. So, you know, chucking a bomb's easy, but chucking a waggler that's not as heavy, you've got to stop it in the right position. And I've caught it again. I've got snapped again. And I'm like, well, I've had to pull for a break because I'm like, Jesus Christ, how strong's this twig? Do you know what I mean? So I couldn't break it. Snapped it again, so I had to reset up.
During a £50,000 Fishermania final.
Because I only set 2 waggler rods up. And while I was doing it, I chucked my bomb out. I'm resetting my waggler back up. And this is where a bit of luck comes in. My tip's gone round on the bomb. So I'm like, oh, I've got one. So I put my rod down that I'm trying to reset back up. You know, with all these people behind you, the pressure can get to some people. And they just put it down because they're a bit embarrassed. But I knew that is the only way I'm going to get a bite. I need to set that waggler back up. And I ended up catching another 2 on it. And then last hour I dropped on the pole and caught some on the pole. And I had a really good finish. And I never felt like I was going to win it. But I was never far behind. And it weren't till literally like with 12 minutes to go. When I watched it back, you don't, like, at the time, I felt in control, do you know what I mean? But with 12 minutes to go, Simon Skelton on the next peg, if he hooks a fish, he beats me. So I'm like, and you're not catching fish that regular. You know, I had 3 in that half an hour, and then I had 4 in the last half an hour, but that was like solid at that time. You're catching 2, anything from 1 to 3 fish every half hour. So we've both got a fish in the net, and I'm thinking, if he hooks another now, that's 40 grand gone. Like, so it's like the pressure starts to get to you a little bit.
Did you feel it at that point? Was you nervous?
Never felt any pressure whatsoever on the first one. I was just fishing and concentrating, and then 12 minutes to go, I hooked a fish. Or was it? No, it might have been less than 12 minutes to go. But basically, I caught a fish right near the death, and I thought, right, that puts me in front. And then I hooked a fish with, say, 2.5 minutes to go. And I thought, well, it don't matter now, just as long as it's on my hook. If he doesn't hook one, I don't even have to net it because I know I'm winning. So I'll take my time, and I netted it with 40 seconds to go, and then that's when I give it the little fist pump as I netted it.
Wow.
And
look what I found here. I've done a bit of Googling.
Yeah, that's the moment there. So like,
Should
look how close it is there. It's 2 kilo.
Is that film, Toby?
Yeah, mate.
Right, watch this.
The bank behind him is absolutely
A little fist pump there. But that was the best feeling in my angling career. I don't think you'll ever replicate it until you've been in that position. It's unreal, do you know what I mean? All my friends and family.
Look at him. Look at the pump.
That was
yes! That's making the hair stick up on my arm. Look at that.
It's mad, isn't it? It's like, but there, like, if you look at the board, it's 41 kilo Simon, 43. At this point, I had 3 fish in the net, and that was my 3rd fish. So I was probably about 2 or 3 kilo ahead there. Maybe 4 kilo. But one good fish, like he had a 4.5 kilo fish in his net. He had a massive fish in his net, so it was closer than what it said. But that was like the best moment in my angling career, just because of the crowd, and you net it, and then you've got people cheering you on that you don't even know, and they just want to see you do well. So you've got total strangers who are just like, go on Andy, do you know what I mean? And it's like, wow, like they actually want me to do well. It's not just my friends and family, like people actually supporting you, do you know what I mean? And that's like what it's all for. Like, I always used to think, I want to win the money. I enter the competitions to win the money. But once you've won a title like Fishermania, because of everything that goes with it, the television and the crowds and everything else, you know, for 12 months, probably 6, a bit less than 12 months, but 12 months, I would have said, you can have the money back, but I'm keeping the title. Now it's probably 50-50. But at the time, it was like, nah, not even bothered about the money. Was not even a thought in my mind. I used to think it was all about the money. But then once you've won the money, you think, wow, I've got that for life. I've won that Fishermania. Like, it's very prestigious. I never realised how prestigious it was.
I think Fishermania is the most prestigious of all the big finals. As a kid, Fishermania, we used to go and watch it at Ayfield Lakes. It's on Sky, it's on telly. I think it's fair to say it is the most prestigious.
Right, even I've heard of it, so
exactly.
That says a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, like you've got Match This, which is a big money event. It's actually more than Fishermania, but it doesn't hold the prestige that the Fish Show wears, the telly and everything else. I'm not saying it's harder to win Fishermania or anything like that.
It's the longest standing money
it's 20
final.
odd years, and it's like, when you've been in it, because that's the first time I was ever in it. I've sat behind my brother in it. I've sat behind Connor when he was second to Jamie back in 2016. But I've never been in, I sat with Andy May when he won it even. And I was his bank runner that day, and it was brilliant. And it was a great day, but a great day for him. Brilliant for me to see my mate win it, but totally different when you're in that position. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like very overwhelming. A lot of emotion. You're like, whoa, do you know what I mean? Like,
Can I ask you, you know when you were there fishing in them final intense minutes, or for any part of the match, I can't help but think, what went through your mind, and did you ever think back to your dad, your accident, the stuff that's happening were there any of that came into it while you're fishing? Does it? How does it feel?
More leading up to it. Like, I have a little box, which I never told anyone. I have a little box of my dad's ashes, do you know what I mean? Which is like that big, and I used to keep it in my box, so I used to go fishing with it. And I never take it fishing now in case I ever lose it or it gets wet. But I used to have it in my old box, so now it's in my fishing room at home. But like leading up to it, I just go in there, give it a little kiss. Dad's pictures on the wall in my garage, because he would have been so proud of me, do you know what I mean? Like, to watch me win that. I would have loved to have seen him be there and watch me win it, because he just loved it. But in the actual final, you're just concentrating. Like, the day before I set off, way in my garage and thingy. But then, like, come on, gives a bit of luck, do you know what I mean? Once,
Yeah.
I've got the peg, sort of thing. Like, well, I didn't have the peg at the time, because you draw the night before, but on my way up, like, come on, let me draw a good peg for once. I'm not really a superstitious person or anything like that, but yeah. And then I went and won it, and then the year after, while I was plumbing up and testing my rig, I actually caught this little rock, and I put it in my box, and I was like, alright, might bring me a little luck that today, first thing of the day, do you know what I mean? Checking me up to make sure it ain't blunt it. Yeah, that's fine, so yeah, keep that one on. And little things like that. I've still got that little rock in my box now from like this year's fish show. But I'll only use it when I need to. So if I might kiss it next year's Fishermania before I start or something like that.
Yeah.
But I won't use it until I need to use it. Like, and the one time I went in, I was like, come on, Dad, give me a bit of luck. Do you know what I mean? And I went and won it. It's like, I've got, drew a flyer and thought, Jesus Christ, like, it's actually, we've got something here, but it's happening. I've got a chance here. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, like during the final, emotion-wise, like I was nervous at the start because I'd never fished with a crowd like that. You'll know from the World Championships.
I struggle me with like women's underwear coming at me and stuff. Like sometimes I have to get it off my tackle and my top kits and what have you.
Hanging off the end of your pole and stuff. Yeah, it's a pain, especially if it catches on your pole pot and you can't flick it off.
When it goes over your eyes and that, when they run down and throw it on your face.
It's a hard life, isn't
terrible, honestly.
Well, if you're an international superstar, Tobe, you know what I mean? I don't get that. But yeah, I was nervous to start with because I'd never seen a crowd like that. I've seen crowds like that, but not directly behind us. And I drew in the area where most of the crowd congregates. You had Jamie Hughes, and then the fancied pegs where we was. So we had the biggest crowd around our area as well, from like pegs 1 to 6, 7. And it's the noise. There's like 5 to 8,000 people there. Like a lot of noise going on. And you don't really want to turn back to look. And I never struggle with, I don't get nervous or such, but I was just like, right, come on. Like, it was more the peg, I think, than the crowd as well. I put a lot of expectation on myself. I thought, if you don't win this, you've blown it. So, like, it's probably the second. I would have rather been on the peg to me right, because I think you've got more options. And Simon Skelton's a brilliant angler, and I knew I had my work cut out, but I thought this could play into my favour because I'll fish pole shallow and then a little bit of rod and line, but it's mainly a pole peg if I'm going to win. And I thought, if you don't win off this today, like, you don't deserve to win, sort of thing. And I'm not interested in coming second, even though it carries 10 grand prize money. I want to win, do you know what I mean? But no, my emotions throughout the day was fine then. The only time I felt like it was getting away from me was when I got caught on that waggler. But even in the last hour, when you practice something so much and it's second nature to you, I weren't nervous about losing the fish or anything like that. I knew it was hooked right just through the way it was fighting and things like that. My gear's right, my elastic's right. So I'm never thinking, I might lose this. I'm just thinking, no, just keep your pole low, do this, do that. And it's just because you've done it, you've been in them situations. So yeah, I think like experience as well helps with them situations. If I'd have been 16-year-old and first ever Fishermania final, I might have been shaking like a leaf and not been able to. I actually remember my first ever final at Whiteacres was a Part D Masters final, and I might have been maybe, don't know, young. Do you know what I mean? Might have even been before my accident. I remember. Well, when did Lee Kerry win it? Can you remember?
I can remember Lee winning it because Lee Edwards was second.
Well,
and they
Lee
were
Kerry
next to-
won it.
I can't remember what year that was.
Yeah, Lee Kerry won it, and it was my first ever final, I think. But yeah, started off and I had to cast a feeder to the island because that was my starting point, and I like loaded my method up, and I was like, Jesus Christ, you know what I mean? Like, what's going on with me? Like, and there's nobody even watching, but it's the thought of winning the money at such a young age. I'm like, you know, get this right today, I could win 25 grand. And I like casting, and I'm like, Jesus, you know, I've never fished for 25 grand. And I was like, casting, wound it back in, second chuck, same again. I'm like, you know, cast out. And then it was something like, I don't know, the lad next to me, I can't remember who it was. It might have even been Andy Powers or something. And he had a cast, and I thought, that wasn't a brilliant cast or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Or whoever it was. I think Andy was to my left actually, but whoever it was to me right or next peg up or whatever it was, a good angler, and he had a bit of a miscast, and it just settled my nerves, and I was like, all right, so, you know, everyone has a bad cast, but my cast landed perfect, by the way. And I was like, and then that was it, I was fine. Do you know what I mean? I was like, all right, so I've just fished now, and then I caught a fish, and that was it. I was just like, right, come on, get me next fish now. But nowadays I don't really get nervous like that.
In the Fishermania final, you've got the headpiece in. What's that all about?
On the first one,
Yeah.
I was just listening to music. That's actually, it's not something I do all the time, but don't ever do it. That was Paul Holland's, my bank runner's iPad, and he's like, just put that on if you want to listen to a bit of music. And I didn't know how to work it, so he's like, what do you want on, a bit of Oasis or something? And I was like, yeah.
This
whatever.
during the match?
This was before the match, but I didn't know how to work it, so basically I had Oasis on repeat for 5 hours. But yeah, I didn't even notice it.
Any rhyme or reason?
No, I just put one of my favourite songs, Talk Tonight, on. Just chilled out song, do you know what I mean? And I just listened to that for 5 hours on repeat. But I didn't even notice it for like 4 hours. I actually only noticed the music, as mad as it sounds, like that last 20 minutes. And, you know, when I'm like stuck in the tree and there's 5,000 people behind you, I'm like, right, setting back up, and it's like, right, just chill out, relax, not a problem. And it didn't really bother me as such, do you know what I mean? Because it's like, it happens, do you know what I mean?
Great for other people to see it happen.
And a lot of people like get embarrassed by it or whatever, and I probably would when I was younger and just go, I'll just put that down because I don't want to make myself look a fool. But, you know, yeah, you go and cast the rod and you cast it in a crosswind and see if you can land a float within a foot every time. And
with Sky TV filming you, 50 grand up for grabs and 2,000 people stood behind you.
And you'll see it's like, it's not as easy as what it looks, do you know what I mean? Like, the island's sloping. But yeah, it's like, you just got to have confidence in what you're doing, crack on with it. It is what it is.
What did you do with the 50 grand?
Paid a bit off my mortgage and then literally spent it all on my house. So we got a new bathroom. We just moved. I bought an house. We just bought an house, and then I went and won Fishermania. So it just basically went on my house and basically spent everything we had on the house.
Which was probably handy that you got the qualification for the next year's final, which was this year.
Yeah.
That was the first year ever that Fishermania gave somebody a free pass to the next final for winning.
Wow.
So you were the first person that they've done that for in the history of Fishermania, which is, I think, nearly 30 years, isn't it now?
That's pretty cool, that.
Yeah, I didn't even know, to be honest, and nobody knew until after the match.
Right.
So when they announced it, just as I was ready to walk up to the stage, I was like, wow, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm already in next year's final. I've got another chance next year.
There's actually a clip of you stood at the bottom of the steps on the stage, and you'll love this, Toe.
Yeah.
We probably won't be able to get it because it'll be Sky footage, but you can see them say, and the winner with a free pass to next year's final, and you can see Bagger going,
You go, what?
Yeah,
Me?
like, whoa,
yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Quality.
I didn't even know. And nobody knew. They kept that quiet.
That's
and then
cool, that.
That's like a because it's one. I don't do that many Fishermania qualifiers. You know, my main aim probably is like my festivals come first because I like going away and fishing festivals and being with my mates away. And then probably match this, and then probably golden reel, and Fish O was probably the last on my list because the venues are so spread compared to the others. So to get back in it, because I probably fished 4 or 5 qualifiers. You know, I don't really want to travel 3 hours, and 2 hours is my limit in terms of travelling. So when they said you've qualified again, it was like, whoa, that is a massive bonus, do you know what I mean? And it gave me time then to try and qualify for the other finals as well, which obviously with COVID and things like that, May of the match this got cancelled, so my summer was all free anyway, do you know what I mean? But
talk to me about 2020, this year's Fishermania final then, the second time that you won it.
So the second time I won it, I drew a peg that was actually, I think it was next or last year, but it was a totally different conditions. Like when it's warm, you want to be around the island. Pegs 1 to 6 was brilliant the year before. It's a little bit shallower. Where I am's pretty deep, do you know what I mean? Probably talking like 10 foot in the early pegs and 12, 14 foot maybe in our pegs or whatever. Just goes a little bit deeper past the island. So like if we went there tomorrow, that would be a brilliant area where I was because it's dead deep. But obviously in the summer, fish want to be in shallow water near the islands. They behave different to what they do in winter. And I drew this peg and I thought, no, I've got no chance, do you know what I mean? It's rubbish there. Like if I'd have been to my left or slightly to my right, I just didn't want to be on them 2 pegs, mine or sort of face, like I didn't want to be facing like where Andy Power was 55, 57. I think Connor was the end peg. I fancied that because I'd won a match leading up to it off that end peg, and there was a lot of room to our left hand side of the lake. And obviously the kids this year as well were put on the bottom bank,
like the junior Fishermania match.
They was put on the bottom bank, so there was a lot of pressure. There was 8 anglers put in that bottom bit. It's only used to seeing 2 or 3 on an open or whatever, so there was a lot of pressure down that bottom end of the lake. And I always felt like the fish would finish at our end of the lake, but I just felt like it still won't be enough, because if they're in the area, they're going to catch more to me left on the point. I'm a little bit set back. Luke to me right was probably a little bit closer to the island.
Luke Sears, that is, isn't it?
Yeah, sorry, I'm not I'm thinking.
No, mate, don't
everybody
worry.
knows
That's what I'm
everybody.
here for.
Luke Sears was to me right, and I thought, you know, Luke's he's a bit close to the island, but he's set back a little bit more than me. But he's got a spare peg to his right. I'm probably on the worst peg in this little bit here. That's what I was thinking in my head. Do you know what I mean? And as it turned out, me and Luke was first and second in the match. So what the hell do I know? But when I look back and analyse it, there's a reason for it. It was cold. The way the wind blew, like Jamie Hughes started like an absolute train, caught 22 kilo in the first hour and a half or something, 2 hours, and I'm sat there. Luke started pretty well, to be fair. I'm sat there and I've had a fish straight away, but then I just couldn't get bites. And I remember I had 7 kilo and it was getting won with 22, so I'm about 32 pound behind the leader and I can't get a bite.
And what point in the match is this?
2 hours in.
Wow.
And I said to Paul, mate, I'm just going to start filling it in. Like, this is not working, do you know what I mean? So, like, I started feeding a lot heavier. Like, Luke next to me started really negative, like, say, 2 pellets. I'm feeding, like, 6 or 8.
And what method are you fishing at this point, Andy?
So, basically, we started the match. Everybody started short pole, caught an odd fish. They caught pretty well to me right to start with, where I thought they would catch. I had 1. Everyone pretty much had 1 around us. Luke was a little bit more patient. He had 2 short, or he had 2 fish anyway. And then it was just a bomb match, just bomb and pellet, dead simple fishing. All you can try and do, and this is where technique comes into it, is try and be as accurate as possible. So feeding, chucking your bomb in amongst it, just giving yourself the best possible chance of getting a bite, because there ain't much to it. It's a very simple method. So you've just got to try and make sure you're feeding enough bait to try and draw the fish in. And to be honest, I don't feel like I fed enough early doors. I was just a bit negative, but I wasn't negative. Like, Luke was mega negative and it nicked him a couple of fish, and I wasn't negative enough negative enough to nick them couple of fish. I fed a little bit too much for the volume of fish were there. But after about 2 hours, it felt like the fish were moving down the lake because Jamie Hughes stopped getting bites. Matty Dawes and Chris Lane, who was catching on pegs for 4 and 5, they was doing all right. They all had like 20 odd kilo apiece. They didn't catch fish for like an hour, and it just felt like the pressure and the cold wind blowing down that end of the lake had took its toll, and the fish was on the way up. And luckily, I just started feeding heavy enough just before they arrived almost, or as they was arriving. But because I caught nothing, I said to Paul, right, I'm just going to start feeding. I've got nothing to lose. And within an hour and a half then, I put like, I don't know, I think it was a 10 and 9, probably like 30 odd, no, 20 odd kilo.
Wow.
60, 70 pound in the net with like, say, 12 fish. I had a 10 kilo weight, which is like 20 pound in half an hour, 22 pound. Then I followed it up. Nobody had a bite for ages. It really slowed up, and I put like another 7 kilo in the net.
And how were you feeling then all of a sudden? Because you said you turned to Paul and said, we're going nowhere, we ain't got a chance.
Yeah, but it also coincided with me changing my hook bait as well. I switched to a double red 8mm pellet, which I'd caught on the year before on the match this final, and I caught really well at the start of the match, and then the fish deserted me because we had the cold wind blowing up to us, and they went down to the calm water where Jamie Hughes was, and he went on to win the Maven match this. The wind was blowing a different direction this year, and the same thing happened, but Jamie stopped catching, and they ended up fishing in front of us. And I was like, leading up to the final, I'd never caught on that red 8mm pellet this year. I did last year, and I said, but I took them with me, do you know what I mean? I was like, I'm going to try a double 8mm pellet, because I've caught so many fish on this lake on it in the past, but didn't really work leading up to it, because it was like summer months. But going into when it's a little bit cooler and the water starts to clear up and bomb fishing starts to play a part, all of a sudden you go back to what you know. Do you know what I mean? I've seen it before, and I put it on and I started catching, and I tried an old, I thought, the fish are just here now. I put an old double 8mm pellet, fishery pellet on, just your standard coarse colour brownie. Didn't have a bite. I was like, now I'm going back to that red 8mm, put it on. 2 minutes later the tip's going round, and I literally caught all my fish bar one on that hook bait. But I think it was more the feeding, like upping my feed. And then I started catching really well, and I was leading it. I had like 8 kilo lead, which was 16 pounds. So
what point in the match is this?
An hour to go or something like that. I had an 8 kilo lead, and then the last hour, and I'd caught fish every weigh-in, but like 1, 2, 4, 5. You know, had that real good spell in the middle.
When you say that, just so people know, Fishermania weigh in every half an hour. So there's a leaderboard, so you can see how many fish and what weight of fish you've had every half an hour.
Yeah, so all match, even when it weren't great early, I'd always caught a fish per half an hour. An hour to go, I'm leading, everything's going perfect, and I go the first half an hour with a blank, and it's like, oh no, don't do this to me. And I was about 8 kilo maybe ahead of Luke, and he caught 2 fish for 5.5 kilo. So now he's within 1 fish of me again.
So you're back to the same situation as a year previous.
So I've gone from I've turned it around from being 15 kilo behind Luke or whatever to being 8 in front. So a 45 pound turnaround, and all of a sudden I'm leading. So I've caught that while he's caught next to nothing basically. So I'm thinking, well, he's stopped catching. And then it's like, oh no, he's coming back at me now, do you know what I mean? And bomb fishing, like I say, there's only so much you can do. And I was like, well, what can I do? I can't have a go. I had a little go on a waggler, no good. It was pulling through too quick. I had a little go back on the short pole, didn't catch one. And I'd not really been feeding my long pole shallow because I couldn't feed the bomb that far. I give up on my long pole shallow, so I made the decision to sack that off. And Luke had religiously been pinging an odd pellet shallow on his long pole. He went out, slapped his rigging, first chuck, it went under. And I was like, oh, that's it. He's won. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's going to do what I did last year, and he's going to catch. And the drone come down from Sky Sports and was filming us. And it's loud, do you know what I mean? And the water's a little bit clear. And I don't know if I didn't even think at the time, do you know what I mean? and it was actually it was just a comment that Luke's bankman had made, and I thought, yeah, do you know what? Like, that might be the reason why I never caught another fish. I'm not sure. No one will ever know. They're like 20, 30 foot up in the air, but they're loud. Do you know what I mean? They
make a big humming noise, don't they?
Noisy,
do you know what I mean? And he never caught another fish on that. So whether that stopped him catching or whatever again, I don't know. It's all ifs and buts. No one will ever know. But I know like how much disturbance and vibrations play a part. Like them drones, when I filmed them with Guru, they get within 15, 20 metres and the water starts to move. The water wasn't moving because they stayed 30, 40, whatever it may be.
It's an uncomfortable sound though. When you're sat
it's just
fishing,
something,
yeah.
Something they're not used to, innit? And it's like right above your head, and it's like, it's not going to make it better anyway, is it?
So Luke's up to fish shallow, got it. Drones come in,
filming us both in between us, sort of thing. And then I'm just fishing away, and I'm getting an odd sign, but I can't get a fish on the hook. And it's like, I don't want to, half an hour to go. I've probably realistically got 5 casts left in me, 6 casts, because I'm chucking every sort of 5 minutes. So I'm thinking, I've got 6 more casts. Do I want to waste a cast with the wrong hook bait on? These are decisions that are going through my head. And I turned to Paul and I said, I've had 3 or 4 signs this last half an hour, but I can't get a bite. Like, I said, like, I don't know what to do. Do you know what I mean? He's like, I said, I feel like the fish are off the bottom, but I can't fish a waggler because the lake's pulling through. I feel like I'm feeding too often now. I'm trying to force it too much. I'm not, like, Paul was sat behind me timing my bites with a stopwatch, and I'd be feeding, say, every 2.5 minutes, but sometimes I feed after like 1 minute and 40, and Paul would be like, oh, it's 1 minute and 40. I said, yeah, I know, but I feel like I need to make something happen. So I'm starting to loose feed more regular. I feel like I'm bringing the fish up off the bottom then. He said, just have 4 to 5 minutes, because this is where a good bank runner comes in. He's like, just have 4 minutes of not feeding. Just feed, chuck it out, don't feed for 4 minutes. So I did that, got to about 4.5 minutes, and my tip went round. And I was like, yes, do you know what I mean? But at that moment, I wouldn't have thought of that, because I was panicking a little bit, because everything's gone plain. I've not been nervous leading up to it. It just felt like an open match because there was no crowds there. There was no pressure.
Obviously due to COVID.
Because of
no
COVID,
audience.
yeah, there was no audience allowed, anything like that. So it was a bit like an open match sort of atmosphere. And I wasn't under pressure. Like, even when I was catching, I was just like, it is what it is. And then it's like, oh, an hour to go. Like, I'm actually now leading, do you know what I mean? Because obviously you've not got people behind you telling what's going on. So Paul didn't find out for 15 minutes. So you don't, when you weigh in with an hour and a half to go, you don't then know for, say, 15 minutes until somebody from Sky comes round and says, oh, you're leading now, Andy. Oh, am I? What by? He's like, 8 kilo. So it worked. The information weren't getting back to us quick enough. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Obviously, people know at home quicker than I would. Whereas when there's a lot of people there, you get people shouting down, Paul, he's weighed blah, blah, blah. And, all right, so he's got 26 and you're on 27. Right, you're 1 fish behind, mate. So with 20 minutes to go, I'm thinking, if Luke hooks a fish now, I've lost 40 grand. We're probably going to be top 2 because nobody was really catching a great deal and we'd pulled away a little bit. But I'm thinking, if he hooks a fish, that's it, 40 grand gone. And literally, I said to Paul, because I like Luke, he's a lovely lad, do you know what I mean? And I know him from Westwood and things like that. And,
he's a diamond of a guy.
Yeah, he's top
really
guy,
nice
Luke.
kid.
Really nice. And I said, do you reckon I should ask Luke if he wants to do a split? If we go 40, there's 60 grand there. Should we go 40-20? 20 grand? Like, that's a nice chunk of money, do you know what I mean? 50-10, like, you can do a lot with 20. You can do a lot with 10 as well, but, like, that extra 10, when it's down to pure luck almost, do you know what I mean? I'm thinking... And I didn't know how he'd respond, so I never said anything, do you know what I mean? But that at the time, I was like, I'm leading, but he probably feels like I'm doing it because he thinks I'm... So I didn't want to ask him because it feels like, do you know what I mean? Like, oh, you're only saying that because you know I'm going to catch another, which I don't think Luke would have felt like
and I don't think you'd do that either.
No, and I wouldn't, but I was like, this is down to pure luck now. And then I was debating it, do you know what I mean? Like, do you reckon I should ask him or what? I don't, if he thinks I'm trying to do him out of some money. And then my tip went round with what Paul said, just have a little, and then it was like, oh right, I'm 7 kilo or whatever ahead again now, because it was quite a big fish, about £7. Now I know, right, Luke ain't going to catch 3 in 15 minutes. There's no way, because he ain't had 3 in 15 minutes all day. Like, it ain't just going to keep going round. So I knew at that point I'd won. But I didn't, because I have a lot of respect for Luke, I didn't celebrate. There was no crowds there. It's not that I didn't have respect for Simon, but it's like heat of the moment with the crowds. You give it a little
First
fist
time
pump.
ever as well.
First time ever. This year I just sort of netted the fish, put it in my net. Didn't really celebrate because I didn't want to feel like I was rubbing it in his face or anything like that, because your heart does sink at moments like that. Do you know what I mean? You think, oh,
It's a life-changing amount of money, Andy.
yeah, it is. And like, I didn't, I thought it's not the time and the place. There's nobody here to celebrate too, just me and Paul. So it was just like, yes, get in there. Do you know what I mean? Like, just that last fish sort of thing. And it was like, it could have gone either way.
Did it feel any different winning it second time to first time?
Yeah, a lot different. Like, there's no. If the crowds were there, I don't know how it'd have been. But because there were no crowds, I'd have hated to win it this year with no crowds as my first ever time, because there was no buzz about it. Like, there's a buzz about it.
Of course, there's going to be 50 grand up for grabs, isn't there?
But when there's a crowd there, it's just like unbelievable feeling. Do you know what I mean? Whereas this year it was like, yes, and that's brilliant. Do you know what I mean? But you miss that euphoria moment. Is it euphoria? Is that the right word?
Sounds good to me. I don't really know the meaning of that one, Tobes, but
is it euphoria?
Yeah.
You miss that moment where it's
yeah.
just like, whoa, yes.
Adrenaline
do you know what I mean?
kicks
Like, yeah,
in.
adrenaline, and you turn around and everyone's emotional and clapping you on. It's brilliant. Do you know what I mean? So you didn't really have that this year.
Yeah.
And if someone had won it, who not, other than maybe Jamie Hughes who'd won it, like anyone else who'd have won it, I feel like they've been robbed of the moment. Do you know what I mean? Because I've been lucky. I've won it twice, but I might not never win it again.
Do you get a free pass to next year's event? Or did they not mention it?
They sort of mentioned it on the, like in the advertisement said, could he do it 3 times? Could you? When he was interviewing at the end, he said like, who knows? Maybe free on the trot next year.
I can't believe you didn't ask him.
I know. I don't know if I'm in the final.
Should have said it on my back next year, mate.
I think I am. I don't think it's there's nothing been said that they're gonna stop it. And I know like Matchroom Sport who run it, they do it a lot with their events, like in pool that I watch. The defending champion always comes back at that. Snooker, they do it a lot. Like if you've won it, they give you a chance to defend it. It's something they do a lot in their events, so I think they'll probably keep it as that.
Yeah. You've obviously won £50,000 2 years running in Fishermania. Now, surely we're going to get a little bit of something back off you from Fishermania. I asked you to bring us a gift. What we got?
Yeah, so I've got you this year's Fishermania. This is my gift for your table. Shift that out of the way.
First ever gift, Toby. First ever gift.
Oh, what a gift that is. Check that out. Go on, hold it up.
So just to let everyone know, he's just handed me the Fishermania waterproof jacket that the finalists get.
Yeah.
Has it got any mud on it? There's a bit of mud on there, Tobe, as well for us.
Yeah, good.
I mean, I could have brought the pants, but they was
Ah,
a bit muddier. So I
we would have
thought,
preferred them.
I'll keep the coat because that's at least cleanish. Do you know what I mean? It's got the sign and the badge on, so yeah, good little bit of memorabilia.
Absolutely awesome,
That's
mate.
awesome. Thank you. Yes.
What a gift. What a first gift. Well, Andy, what's next for Andy Bennett?
Just to keep trying to be consistent. But next on my tick list, the one I really want to win is the Part D Masters Final. That's what I want to win next. It'd be nice to win Fishermania again, but I really want to win the Part D Masters Final. And just keep fishing and being consistent, trying to frame as much as possible, and yeah, just do well in my fishing.
I don't think you're going to have a problem doing that, mate. And
hopefully.
I'm hoping that Andy Bennett, Fishing Gurus podcast number 2, we might be talking about Part D Masters Final win.
Sounds like a plan.
Andy, thank you very much, mate.
My pleasure.
See you soon.
See you soon. Cheers, Tob.
Cheers, mate.
The Fishing Gurus podcast.